across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And of course, coming up at midnight, it is our phone in. It is a full hour of just you and me, and it's the only hour, it's the only actual phone in left on this station, so it's all for you. So from midnight, there's no guests, there's nothing, it's just you and me. And what I want to talk to you about at midnight is the situation that's going on with the NHS. The NHS was forced to pay out 2.8 billion last year in compensation for botched procedures and substandard care. In response, ministers were warned not to dither and delay in reforming the health service. The figure, up from 1.2 billion a decade ago, is primarily down to maternity care payouts, the House of Commons Library data shows. Now, there can't be anything worse than being let down by the NHS, but the more money it's like the vicious cycle. It's like the pothole theory, isn't it? That if you damage your car in a pothole, you then sue the council, who has to pay you for the damage that you did in the pothole, and therefore they can't afford to fix the pothole. So that more cars get damaged and more people sue the council, and then there's less money to fix the potholes. And I kind of see that with the NHS, in that if the more money that is taken out of the NHS, the less good the NHS is going to be, the more mistakes that there could possibly be made, the more people who are concerned about carrying out a particular type of surgery for fear they're going to be sued. So I don't know the answer to this, but it does seem that this is increasing at a rapid rate, and that tells me one of two things: either we're becoming much more litigious, or the NHS is becoming much worse. So what do we do about this? Because suing the NHS is suing ourselves, isn't it? Because the only money that the NHS gets is from the taxpayer. It's not from the government. They don't have any money. It's from the taxpayer. So I wonder if we need to change. I don't know how we go about this, but this is why I talk to you about these things. And I want to know if you've ever been in a position where you've wanted to sue the NHS, or maybe you have sued the NHS, or your treatment has been so awful that you thought about suing the NHS. I would love to hear from you on this. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Particularly, I'd love to hear from you if you've ever thought about suing the NHS, or you are thinking about it now. So we'll talk about that at midnight. Before that, we have Sam Fowles in the studio. He's going to be going through the newspapers for tomorrow. We have Johnny Hearn talking us through some romantic movies, and one not quite so romantic. And Phil Dave will be here as well, talking us through some of the tech news that is around. But of course, the big story at the moment is US and Russian officials meeting today in Saudi Arabia for the first round of peace talks on ending the war in Ukraine. It was 4.5 hours long, but Ukraine weren't at the table, which is, to me, quite extraordinary. And even Vladimir Zelensky has said, look, I'm not going to accept any deal if we're not at the table. Now, some people would say, well, this is the first round, that, you know, it's going to be fine. But this must be humiliating to not be at the table. The Russians, of course, are absolutely tickled pink. If you've been watching any Russian coverage of this, they think they're back at the big table with the big boys, and they think that they're going to get all the sanctions removed and they're going to get everything their own way. And the reason it seems they believe that is because Putin and Trump have been having their little conversations. They agreed to appoint teams to negotiate the ending of the Ukraine war. Europe wasn't there either, and they should be. And by Europe, don't mistake, I'm saying the EU. That's a trading and financial body. The Europe is the individual European countries and their individual armies and their individual militaries, which will be called, presumably, to help in any peace, or at least they will be called into a war should Putin decide that he's not going to obey the rules. So, they weren't there either. Today, Volodymyr Zelensky even postponed. He was meant to be in Saudi Arabia, but he decided not to go until March the 10th, adding that no talks could be held behind Ukraine's back on how to end the war. So I thought it was time we spoke to somebody from Ukraine who would tell us what it wants and what it's willing to accept. And to that end, Andrei Osadchuk joins me now, who's a member of Parliament in Ukraine. Good to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I wanted to hear your voice on this because it's missing everywhere else.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. Definitely a lot of confusions, but if to look at all this story very carefully, I don't think that there are a lot of surprises. You remember Trump was promising to end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours by calling Putin. Then it appears to be not so easy. Finally, he made a call. Finally, they had a meeting today. The biggest conclusion of this meeting that they agreed on nothing. In fact, the official statement from the United States that they agreed to continue finding the way how to agree. So meaning it was a zero result attempt. Definitely it is big diplomatic success of Moscow and for Kremlin and for Putin. But again, it's not a surprise because Trump months ago was saying that he absolutely does not agree with the policy of Biden, which was about blocking of any contacts with Russia. So that's why the reopening of the contacts with Moscow was very much expected. So that's why it's not really surprising. But definitely it's a challenge. It's a challenge not only for Ukraine, because I'm repeating for the last 2 years that Ukrainian war is not the issue of Ukraine. The bets went so high that for the last couple of years it's understood that it is European issue. Is the issue of national security of European countries and United Kingdom. And definitely it's not acceptable neither for us, nor for European Union, nor for UK that both sides of this talks in Saudi Arabia said that we don't want neither Ukraine, nor Europe, nor any other actors around the table. So that's why by definition, it's not acceptable. By definition, neither Ukraine nor we believe our allies in Europe will accept any decision which can be taken without our participation. But the good news that I strongly believe that Trump team will not be able to reach any deal with Moscow. Believe me, because for Moscow, it's absolutely existential war. They lost so many people. Ukrainian army was able to destroy almost 50% of Russian army, almost 50% of all military warehouses, which was established since Soviet era. So the Russians are so angry, not Russians, it's not correct, the Kremlin and FSB is so angry that we are resisting for 3 years. They are so angry that Europe and UK is helping Ukraine. So that's why their plans was not changed at all. So they want surrender of Ukraine and the West. That's their target. And yes, they will try to cheat Trump people. Yes, they will try to discuss other issues. I don't think that you was right saying that they were talking about Ukraine 4.5 hours. I know that there were a lot of other topics, and definitely for Russians and for Americans, other topics are also important. But my feeling and my expectation that they will reach no agreement. And as faster Trump people understood that it's impossible to reach any peace deal with Kremlin, as better for all of us. Because what we will work for is to create a strong Europe position on this. I think it's very important to have one voice.
It seems, first of all, I'd like to address how Vladimir Zelensky and you as an MP and others feel about this. I mean, is this a humiliation? And if it is this deliberately done? I mean, Moscow is even questioning the validity of sitting down with Zelensky because the last elections were missed. So they're dismissing him. It feels like it is a deliberate humiliation.
Look, we're too adult to be humiliated from Vladimir Putin, who is for us criminal, and not only for us, for International Criminal Court, he is criminal. And I would emphasize that it is ridiculous for any democratic politicians or even citizens to discuss any words of Vladimir Putin about democracy and elections. Vladimir Zelensky is a legitimate president of Ukraine. Myself is a legitimate member of the parliament of Ukraine. We cannot conduct any elections because elections is not just the word, it's a democratic process. We cannot do that. Just an hour ago, it was another drone attack on Kyiv. With 4 million people inside, we have every night attacks. We have 1 million people in the Ukrainian army. We have 7 million internal replaced persons. We have not less than 5 million adults in Europe. How you can conduct elections, meaning democratic elections, and
but that is said, surely that has been said to try and humiliate Zelensky.
No, definitely what Putin is doing is to trying to humiliate Zelensky and to trying to provocate any internal instability in Ukraine. Look, the fundamental result of 3 years of resistance of Ukraine, that Russian army can do nothing with Ukrainians, despite they're bigger than we, despite that they have more weapons, and so on, so on. They can do nothing. They have lost minimum 300,000 people being killed in Ukraine. Can you imagine? 300,000 killed, not less than 600,000 injured. That's absolutely dramatic losses for Russia, but they don't want to stop because they don't care about their losses. And yes, now they will put all their energy inside Ukraine, try to destroy Ukraine from inside, as they previously did or trying to do in Ukraine during the last 20 years. The same what they did in Georgia, by the way, the same that they were trying to do in Moldova. So that's very typical FSB approach. So no surprises at all.
Well, what the question is, and I read a lot about this, is that it seems like that both sides are entrenched here. Russia has been told, it seems, look, you can keep that land. Ukraine is saying, no, you can't. We want that back. Pete Hegseth is saying that, oh, well, it would be crazy for Ukraine to believe that they can go back to the borders that they had nearly 3 years ago. That would be stupid. You know, just let them have let Russia have that land. And by the way, they're not going to pay reparations. And by the way, you can't join NATO. What does ideally Ukraine want? What will Ukraine accept in a peace negotiated?
Look, first of all, we will demand respect to the thousands of innocent people being killed. We will demand respect to the heroes of Ukrainian war. Nobody was believing in them because everyone was giving us a week, but we are fighting for 3 years. Then we will demand the recognition of Russian war crimes. They killed thousands. They flattened hundreds of villages and cities. It's a war crime by international law. And again, we will demand respect, at least some general highlights of international law. Because if we will ignore all that, we're pushing all of us into chaos, especially if you see that the rhetoric of Trump and Putin sometimes is very similar. I think the only way for us in Europe to survive is to keep together and to demand the respect of international law. We are very realistic. We understand that we are not physically able to take back the territories which are temporarily occupied by Russia. Yes, because we're weaker. But from another side, don't forget that for the last 2.5 years, Ukraine never had enough weapons from the West. Never. We were receiving some limited portion of military equipment as from US, as from Europe, by different reasons. And in fact, we were not allowed to success in this war, especially when we had a chance in the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. So that's why, yes, we are very realistic, believe me. But what we really want, we want not just to have a ceasefire, we want to have a guarantees that this nightmare will never, ever repeat it again. I want to remind you about the war in Chechnya, which Putin did 20 years ago. First war they lost, but they took a pause for 2 years, and then they came back to Chechnya and in fact killed almost everyone. I'm sure, I know that they want to do the same with Ukraine. Because again, for Russians, for Kremlin, it's a huge defeat already. Because they haven't got what they want, and as I said, they already paid a huge price. But it doesn't mean that it will stop them. So that's why the critical issue for Ukraine and for the Europe's safety and security is to give the clear answer. What can stop Russians? What is the guarantees, safety guarantees for Ukraine which will work? My answer is very simple. We need Western troops inside of Ukraine, and we need long-term program of investments into Ukrainian military manufacturing. And it is already growing because almost 30% of all ammunition we do by ourselves, which is huge. But we need to increase investments to our military manufacturing. And yes, we need more weapons supply from the West. For one simple reason, that we are fighting with one of the largest military capabilities in the world. Weekly, we are using more rounds that UK produce annually. Can you understand these figures? So
well, I know
the dynamic of the war is huge.
I know
that's why the resources which we need is huge.
Yeah, you're spending 37% of your GDP at the moment as well on the war effort. I just want to ask you a question about what's going on in the region of is it Donbass at the moment? When we look and see that you've got Belarus. My understanding is there are Russian troops there on military exercise. Is that right? In Belarus?
The Russian troops are there during all this time. And I want to remind you that the regional attack on Ukraine on February 24, 2022 was also from Belarus. Kyiv was attacked from Belarus 3 years ago. And since that time, we know that Putin done dozens of attempts to involve the Belarusian military directly to warfare in Ukraine. But Belarusian dictator Lukashenko, he's a very smart guy, and he understands that it is extremely risky for him to directly participate in the warfare in Ukraine. So till today, there was no Belarusian troops in Ukraine. But Russian troops, they were in Belarus. And we will not surprise that they will try to repeat some kind of attack from the north. But the reality of the warfare for today, that Russia has a lot of problems with people for the front line. You know that they're bringing people from North Korea, they're bringing people from Africa, from Asia. So despite huge size of Russian Federation, even for them, it's very difficult to recruit more and more people for the front line. In fact, the only model which works in Russia, they pay huge money for any newcomer, huge money even for any country in the world. So if I'm not mistaken, more than $25,000 is like an entry ticket for any new soldier who is joining Russian army. Said that, yes, they are in Belarus, but we see that they still have a very hard time in the other parts of the front line. And we don't think that they have capacity and human power to organize any new attack from Belarusian side.
Is it possible to reach a satisfactory peace deal with Russia? Again, my understanding is they're already talking about removing NATO membership from countries to go back to the, was it the 1997 era of NATO membership. Russia seems to just keep asking for more and more. Is peace going to be possible?
You just gave the answer on your questions. When FSB is hear the word negotiation, for them it's demonstration of weakness. When they see that their counterpart is weak, they demand more, more, and more. In fact, talking about NATO, and in fact, saying about the fact that Ukraine is not in NATO today, it's not because something wrong with Ukraine. It's because the veto right on NATO extension is in Moscow, not in Brussels. And yes, as they see that the Brussels and everyone is weak, yes, they are demanding pushing NATO out of Baltics, out of Poland, out of Slovakia, meaning that Russia is fighting not only for Ukraine, they are fighting for domination in Eastern Europe because they want to rebuild the reputation and strength of Soviet Union. They never hide that. They do this very openly. And yes, it's not just direct threat. It's a new chapter of war if Ukraine will collapse. So that's why everything is too serious to continue all this endless discussions. They cannot stop the warfare simply because they went so far in changing their economy, because now they operate like a military factory. And they went so far in propaganda inside Russia that, believe me, they cannot stop. The only way how they can stop if they understood that the oil is dropping to $40 per barrel or less, and if they will understood that Ukraine and the West is stronger than they are today. So that's why we all just need to spend much more money for our safety and security. United Kingdom and the Europe shall dramatically increase military manufacturing. And unfortunately for the Europe, the only capable army which can protect Europe is Ukrainian army. So that's why we need to act jointly and think about our victory and not try to look at the eyes of Putin thinking that we can find any peace there. They don't want peace. They want war.
It has been fascinating talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me. I do hope you'll come and talk to me again. Andrei Osadchuk, who's a member of Parliament in Ukraine. Quick break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there. Excuse me. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Now, coming up at midnight, I want to talk to you about the NHS. This is, I'm really not sure I know the answer to this, because yes, the NHS needs to be held accountable for mistakes that it makes, but £3 billion worth of compensation is being paid out for obviously gross things that have gone badly, horrifically wrong. But some health trusts are paying out such huge amounts of money. Bart's Health, by the way, 94.5 million in compensation. Mid and South Essex NHS Trust paid out 65 million, and Manchester University NHS Trust paid out 61 million. There's also a significant rise in new compensation claims compared to 2014-15. I mean, the Salford Royal NHS Trust, for example, has been a near threefold rise from 63 to 229 just in a few years. I mean, look, this does prove that the NHS is broken, and it's all very well Wes Streeting and Keir Starmer going, yay, we've got more appointments in the system, but still, if the NHS is being sued that much, that often, for that much money, then there's something horribly wrong going on. But also, when you sue the NHS, or when we sue the NHS, we're just suing ourselves, really, because we're taking money out of the NHS budget, which means there's less money in the budget for next year to treat people properly. And then if they're not treated properly, there'll be a mistake, and then more money will be taken out the following year. And these figures seem to kind of back that up, that the less money there is in the pot to treat us, then the more accidents, mistakes, misconduct will happen, and therefore more money will be taken out. And it's just a downward spiral. The other thing that concerns me about this is you're going to get surgeons now who are risk adverse. And I know that we sign those documents, don't we, to say, you know, we're fine with that, we're happy with that. But still, you know, if surgeons think there's any chance that they will be sued, or they will be suspended, or they will lose their jobs, it must be like being in America, where, I mean, the lawsuits are bigger, presumably, but also the NHS it's not free, but it's free at the point of need. Some people take out more than they're entitled to, some people take out less, and that's the whole point of a welfare state, right? But it's fundamentally, it could be completely free to you, and yet you get, I don't know, but then if somebody does something awful to you, then you should be able to sue them. So I'm really kind of in the middle on this one, but I'd love to hear from you if you've got any story that kind of links with this, that you've maybe had bad treatment, you've had somebody who you needed to sue the NHS over, or you felt you shouldn't sue the NHS because it literally is doing what I'm saying. It's that whole pothole theory that I was talking about earlier, that actually it's just taking money away from the next patient who might have something happen to them because there aren't enough staff on duty, or that they couldn't afford to buy, I don't know, a cleaner that week, or whatever the thing is that the NHS couldn't afford to do, or they can't afford to get you in to have your 2-week pathway cancer scan, and therefore you die from cancer down the road because you weren't seen quick enough because there wasn't enough money to have that extra doctor on duty. Do you see what I mean? So I'd like to know if you've been in that position where you've thought about it, and maybe you've had to do it. And in what circumstances should you be able to sue the NHS? Maybe that's a different way of looking at it as well. So how bad would it have to be before you could sue the NHS? And is there a better way of doing it, so that lessons are learned? People always say, oh, we didn't do it for the money. We did it so that they would pay attention to this horrendous thing that happened. So is there another way of doing it that doesn't leach money out of the health service, which we're told so desperately needs it, although it's £192 billion a year now to run the NHS? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And joining us now is Phil Dave, who's a Talk broadcaster, and he's here to talk to us about the tech news. Hello.
Oh, good evening, Lady Hosken.
Good evening to you, looking very dapper, as usual.
Oh, very kind, thank you. Well, I was actually admiring I have seen this before. It's sort of your pink leopard print top, isn't it?
Yeah.
Very nice.
But can't go wrong with a bit of leopard print, that's what I say. Anyway.
I think it would if I wore it.
Yeah,
Let's put it that way.
I don't know, I can see it. You must let me dress you one time, it'd be fun.
It's clearly a new definition of the word fun I wasn't previously made aware of, but okay.
Well, at least it would be fun for me. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. Let's talk the AI summit. Now, this was the big summit last week, wasn't it? The big chat and agreements and all this thing. Lots of talk about safety. But we didn't sign it. We didn't sign the agreement on AI safety, and neither did the US. And we've been at the forefront of safety, right? And security and looking at what AI could do, but we didn't sign it.
Well, we can be at the forefront, it's certainly true, but the problem we've got at the moment, and this is actually sort of one of the biggest bugbears, if you like, of anyone who works in the technology industry, is that world leaders can't get their heads together and agree on what the best approach to AI actually is. Now, you've got people like Emmanuel Macron, of course, the French president, saying that we shouldn't be afraid of innovation, yet there were warnings from some of the leaders in technology saying that, yes, it is true that this is a very transformative period that is comparable to, say, the Industrial Revolution or possibly even the invention of the printing press. But the problems that we've got is that if we don't adopt the right attitude towards public safety and also regulations to make sure that people are behaving themselves when it comes to the development of AI, then there can be possibly no greater threat. So it's unfortunately, people just can't agree at the moment what the best approach to take is. And I'm sort of erring more, and I don't normally say this, on the side of regulation, because I don't actually think we know enough about AI yet to be able to say with any certainty that if we let it run wild, that it won't come back to bite us.
Yeah, no, exactly that. And Mal Fletcher, who you know is a futurist that I talked to about AI a lot, and he said, look, we've got to instill AI with a moral code, and that is something that is not being done, that there need to be morals and ethics, and actually there should be people who are professors of both things at the table when they talk about where AI goes now, and it's being completely neglected, because if we don't give it a code of morals and ethics, then it will make up its own, and that's where the danger lies.
See, the way I look at this is, look what happened with the invention of social media, for example. How has social media totally transformed our lives? And I'm not just talking about those of us who maybe whip out our phones and start looking at all sorts of apps like Facebook, Instagram, and all of the rest of them. We know how many social media sites there are. I'm not talking about that kind of changed our lives. I'm talking about the way it's changed the way that we communicate with one another. And look at what it's actually done to, say, the world of marketing, for example. There are many companies that used to focus on a certain type of marketing many years ago before social media came along, and now their sole focus is social media. It has totally changed the way that we know our working world and even our social world as well. I mean, obviously, hence the name. But the point being is that we sort of let that run amok. And I'm a bit worried that if we do the same with AI, which clearly we sort of have a bit of a habit of doing, then who only knows what's going to happen as a result of it. So I'm not going to pretend that this is going to be a walk in the park. I'm not worried yet, but I think we need to wake up and realise that we probably should be doing something about keeping it in line.
Yeah, it's always worrying when people go, well, who knows where it's going to end up? Well, we should.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I don't want the who knows or the what ifs or anything about it. I want certainty. I want us to take decisive action as a species and say, look, do you know what? There is a possibility that this newfound technology could help us immeasurably, and I really believe it could. We've already seen how it can.
Yeah.
But there's also a possibility that this newfound technology could be a real threat to us, and we shouldn't bury our heads in the sand about it and just sort of say, oh, it'll be fine. It won't if we don't do something about it.
No. Elon Musk has gone loopy. Some people might say that he did that a long time ago, but he's definitely gone loopy over Dubai.
Yeah, so Elon Musk has announced plans to construct this 17-kilometre underground transportation system in Dubai, known as the Dubai Loop, hence the reason that you suggest he's gone loopy. And it's actually been unveiled alongside the UAE's AI minister, one Omar Al-Olama, at the World Government Summit. It's the project, by the way, that's executed by Musk's company called, and I love this name, the Boring Company. As in, like, boring a tunnel. Great name, isn't it? Come on, you've got to give credit to the guy. He's got a good sense of humour, if nothing else. But the actual system itself aims to transport passengers at speeds of a rather eye-watering 100 miles an hour that potentially enable travelling to any location within Dubai in approximately 6 minutes. So it utilises a fleet of driverless Tesla vehicles, and the network is designed to accommodate anything up to about 20,000 passengers per hour over more than 100 stations. So this is very much like a sort of a 21st century London Underground, if you like.
But driving?
Well, yes.
I would be driving. Oh, driverless
vehicles.
Okay.
But yeah. So, yeah. I mean, it is more like a car, but it would be... Yeah, it would be driverless.
But he's also considering one in Las Vegas, is that right?
Well, Las Vegas Loop has been in talks for a long time. The truth is it actually sort of started, I believe I'm right in saying it started with what's Virgin Hyperloop was the original name, and it was obviously under Richard Branson's collection of organisations. So I think that the idea of some sort of loop in Las Vegas has been mooted for quite a while, but not necessarily ever come to fruition. The reason why I think it could do in Dubai is because this, not least of all, has the backing of the Crown Prince, but actually also, if you think of the way that Dubai is not afraid to just get on and build stuff, if you look at the reputation of how they have come on so far in relatively a short space of time, even if you compare photos of Dubai to 20 years ago, the place is unrecognizable. So I believe that sort of as a country that loves to develop its infrastructure, this could very well be a reality before long there. But I would like to think that what it will do is it will say to the rest of the world, oi, look, this is what you could have if you just stop putting red tape in the way and actually develop some infrastructure that works in this day and age.
We've got the Circle Line. We in London. We don't need this loop. We got the Circle Line,
which isn't actually technically a circle anymore.
It's not a circle, and it's not a straight line, and it doesn't go very fast. And
it keeps stopping a lot.
And
I don't mean just at the stations.
But,
Well, that's what I mean. I don't just mean at the stations. I mean it's. Let's be honest. It's a bit pants, really.
It is. It is pants. It has to be said. But still, we've got it, and we're ahead of Musk, so there you go. That's been there for hundreds of years, isn't it? So
not driverless, though.
No. Oh, don't mention driverless. The tube drivers will be outside this building with placards.
I'm sorry, tube drivers. I'm sorry, but I don't like it.
It will be driverless at some point. We know that. It's got to be. But anyway,
most London Underground lines are actually capable of being driverless now, even in this day and age. The technology is there to make them driverless.
Yeah. Because of the lights and the technology they've put in. The trouble is we need somebody to press that button. Very important.
Maybe, but that would still require less person power than having one driver per train.
I love that. Sam's just said there's nothing wrong with having to press buttons.
Yeah, the difference is, Sam, that we need someone to press the buttons you're pressing. We don't necessarily need someone to press the buttons
we
on the
can
underground.
We can use AI for Sam any day now. Right, let's talk about this. This is weird. I mean, for a start, the headline is not true, but thousands of Britons dating chatbots. They're not dating chatbots, right? They're just not.
Okay, I might have taken this from the Telegraph, so I would urge you to take the headline with a little bit of a pinch of salt. However, I thought was an interesting topic to raise with you because I know that it is something that you have discussed before, and that is the effects of loneliness. But actually, what does loneliness look like in the world of technology, and in particular AI technology? And according to the Telegraph, anyway, with a significant rise in loneliness, nearly 1 million Brits have turned to AI chatbots for some sort of companionship. So this could be thousands engaging in virtual relationship applications such as Replica, which basically offers users AI-generated partners, friends, mentors, dare I suggest even more, and providing a sort of sense of connection in the absence of human interaction. But what's particularly fascinating about this is the Institute for Personal Development, or the IPD. Technically speaking, I suppose I'm a bit of an IPD, aren't I, if you think about it? Just saying. Right. The Institute for Personal Development, come on, that wasn't terrible. Institute for Personal Development has basically said that although it is possible that it might help in the short term, what they're worried about is that actually it could increase the epidemic of loneliness in the long term because it could shatter the abilities people have to form human relationships. Because what they'll be doing is they'll be getting that, I suppose, pent-up loneliness out on AI, satisfying that, and I suppose in the same sort of way that one might suggest someone might become addicted to something, it just becomes this vicious spiral that you can't really get out of.
It's very weird. I mean, this is what has particularly spun my brain. It says that the popular bots have names such as popular boyfriend, abusive boyfriend, and mafia boyfriend. I mean, who's choosing, I know, I want an abusive boyfriend? That's just sick, right? It's weird.
Well, it's certainly not necessarily something I can comprehend, but I guess it's or maybe like a 21st century Munchausen's or something like that.
Abusive boyfriend.
I don't mean Munchausen's. What do I mean when you have a thing for your captor? What's that?
I can't remember now. I know.
Sorry, someone will shout and tell us what it is. I can't remember what it is, but you know what I mean, where you sort of end up having this sympathy for your captor, if you like, and you almost become addicted.
Wanting an abusive boyfriend, I mean, that they should not allow that. I mean, that's just weird.
Listen, I'm not going to pretend to understand it or even condone it. I just somehow think that it is a real alarm bell to suggest just how lonely people must be feeling, that they would be prepared to turn to something like that in order to try and somehow satisfy or pacify that particular feling. I think it's a real worry.
I think you've got more problems than loneliness if you're actively seeking an abusive boyfriend. But I mean, what do I know? Phil, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Phil, Dave there. Stay where you are. We're talking movies next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there. Good to have your company. Stockholm Syndrome. Couldn't get it in my head. But anyway, that's what Phil and I were just talking about. With me in the studio now is Johnny Hearn, filmmaker, broadcaster and talk film reporter. And you were forced to go and see Bridget Jones this week. Have I been forgiven?
No.
No. Okay.
3 years nearly been doing this. I've done a lot for you, Petrie. I've recommended some great films for you. And I've endured watching some rubbish for you just so that I can advise you not to. And you specifically asked me to go and watch Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. Bridget Jones number 4, which I did.
Yeah.
Thank
I mean, you
you.
do know I did that just to wind you up.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't mean it. But thank you for going. Tell me, how wonderful is this? Because some people will love this. It's just not for you and me, right?
A very good friend of ours loves this film, has just been to see it this evening.
I'm going to have a word with her
to
tomorrow.
say how much she loved
She's
it.
having a word.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is the fourth Bridget Jones film. I didn't even know it was the fourth one. I stopped after number 2, so I thought this was the third one. This is the fourth Bridget Jones film. The first one 2001, second one 2004, third one 2016. So now the fourth one. So the premise of the story is she has two young children from Mr. Darcy, Colin Firth, who she's married to, who has died sadly 4 years earlier. Oh no, it's like the very beginning of the film. He's died 4 years earlier whilst on a humanitarian mission in Sudan. And obviously, because he's going to die a noble death, couldn't be,
Yeah.
And so she's sort of struggling to look after and raise her children, and her friends all kind of give her advice, most of which seems to centre around, you need to go out and find another fella.
Right.
And so she does. Now, coincidentally, at this precise moment, a new teacher starts at her school where her children go to.
Yeah.
Played by Chiwetel Ejiofor, and of course they don't get on straight away, because in a romantic comedy you never get on with the person that you meet that you're going to be able to end up with. So you immediately know where this story's going. But it does take a nice little twist that she doesn't actually end up dating Chiwetel Ejiofor, the school teacher. She ends up dating some random person she meets on Hampstead Heath. Not like that.
I was going to say.
Who rescues her while she gets stuck up a tree with her children. So he's a much younger man. She starts dating him. And then the film sort of plods along for the best part of 2 hours, not really doing anything, just sort of dragging up some of the old characters, like Jim Broadbent, Sally Phillips, and Emma Thompson, and of course the wonderful Hugh Grant. And then it sort of just lumbers into its inevitable conclusion, which I don't even need to say.
No, you don't need to tell me. No. Right, let's. This is Bridget Jones, Mad About the Boy. It's a 15 and it's 2 hours and 4 minutes. Let's listen to a clip. A trip.
You need a trip.
I do.
Bridget, you're a widow with 2 wonderful children. My advice to you is put your own oxygen mask on first. You just have to get laid.
Shaz is right.
Oh my God.
It's been 4 years now.
You're effectively a nun. A very, very naughty nun.
I've set you up on Tinder.
What's Tinder? Mummy! Mabel's stuck up the tree! We're going to die!
Everything all right, Mrs. Darcy?
Oh my God.
Hiya.
I've climbed a magical man tree.
Hello.
You can call me Rockstar.
Bridget Jones. But you can call her Mummy.
It's time to live.
Uncle Daniel!
Miniature Darcy, what's the news?
Where are the ladies with the big...
Hair. Well, they couldn't make it, I'm afraid. They're washing their hair.
all 3?
Well, they wash each other's, you see.
Yeah, we like Hugh Grant.
Hugh Grant is actually the one redeemable thing about this film. I always suggest wait till it comes out on streaming, and then, which won't be too long, and then you can sort of fast forward it until you see Hugh Grant, and then start watching for the sort of 30 seconds or whatever it'll be on, and then fast forward to the next bit, and then that 5 minutes will be really funny, because he's actually really funny in this. The best character by far, and the only time I laughed was when he was on screen.
Yeah, well, he has improved in the years that he's been an actor, that's for sure. I like him now. I didn't used to like him at all. Heart Eyes. This is an 18, so I'm guessing it's a thriller or it's a horror.
It's a horror film, yeah.
1 hour, 37 minutes, and it's in cinemas. So tell me about Heart Eyes.
Okay, so Heart Eyes is a Valentine's Day killer, serial killer film.
Brilliant.
And so the premise is that there is this masked serial killer, of course all the best ones are masked, who has hearts for eyes on the mask, hence why it's called the Heart Eyes Killer. And on Valentine's Day every year for the previous couple of years has gone on a killing spree around a particular American city and a different city each year. And nobody knows who this masked killer is. And then suddenly starts happening again this third year in a row, this time in Seattle. The difference is that this time this masked killer actually starts to stalk after 2 people who aren't a couple, because the premise is that he only kills couples.
Smug couples.
Smug couples.
Right,
but so the story centres around this young advertising executive who's having a tough time at work. Her boss brings in this dashing, handsome young troubleshooter guy. They get thrown together, and they go out for a work meeting on Valentine's night. It's a little bit contrived. And for one reason or another, they look like they're in a couple. I'm not going to give too much away. They look like they're in a couple, and then the masked killer goes, oh, I'll attack them, and then goes chasing after them, and then they have to try and survive.
That's my kind of romantic story.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I like. Blood and guts and death. Right, let's. This is a clip of the movie. So this is Heart Eyes, and it's an 18, and it's in cinemas now.
Did you go to med school or something?
I dropped out, actually. I really can't do blood. Anyway, now I'm considered homophobic.
Oh, I didn't take you for a bigot.
Okay. Your dad jokes are top-notch. But I'm being facetious, obviously. Your jokes are cheesy as
What are you doing?
Get your mind out of the gutter!
Yep. Come on. Come on. You got it?
Yes!
Oh, good job.
Thanks.
Hey, you good?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But if I just tied the door handle to I'd get out. I wouldn't go, phew, and lean against the door.
When I watched that moment, I did say to myself,
Idiots.
don't lean against the door when you know there's a guy with an enormous knife behind it, because obviously the knife's going to come through the door, which is because it happens the very next moment. There are a few moments in this where you think, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
No, that's a stupid thing to do.
Yeah. Like girls on their own when they go to the bottom of the garden with just a torch, wearing just pants and a vest.
Yes.
And a big cardigan, and they go out there to see if there's a killer in the garden, and there always is.
Oh yeah, of course. Always
I
make
don't
sure
know
you
why
go
they
out
do
and
that.
check.
I don't know why they do
Absolutely.
that. Idiots.
There are a couple of twists and turns in this. Some are fairly predictable. The big twist in it is, I mean, I guessed it, but then I kind of guess a lot of twists because I see a lot of movies. But so there are a couple of twists in this movie. Who the killer is, I kind of guessed. I suspect there will be a Heart Eyes 2. I suspect there will probably be a Heart Eyes 3 over the next couple of years. It's a decent enough horror movie. It's something different. It's got a strong premise. So
why
that's
not?
all you need for a horror movie these days.
And a lot of people are bitter, so they quite like the idea of smug couples being killed on Valentine's. Kind of Pregnant. Now, this is on Netflix. I've seen it. I've sort of seen it and gone, nah, I don't think I'll watch that. So tell me about Kind of Pregnant. It's an R. I don't even know what that means anymore.
Sort of restricted.
Right. Can't they use the same blooming system?
It's kind of the equivalent of 15, basically.
Well, why don't they just say that?
No.
It's Netflix. Tell me about Kind of Pregnant.
So it's a new film starring Amy Schumer and Will Forte. So she plays a young woman who really dreams of settling down and having a family. When she finds out that her best friend is pregnant, her and her husband are going to have a child. And she, for one reason or another, pretends to be pregnant at the same time. But there's one group of friends like that her best friend and the people she works with know she's not pregnant, so she doesn't do it there. But for other people, she does pretend to be pregnant, and she ends up befriending a young couple who are about to have their second child, and she has to pretend to be pregnant. And then she meets a guy that she quite likes, played by Will Forte, so she has to pretend to be pregnant to him whilst pretending not being pregnant to other people. And then, of course, the two worlds collide at various moments when she's caught out, so she has to find a way to make it look like she's pregnant in front of the people who think she's pregnant, and obviously not be pregnant in front of the people who know that she isn't. And there are a lot of sort of contrived situations like that she has to get herself in and out of, with a few minor jokes.
No, I like Amy Schumer a lot.
Yeah, I do as well.
I
thought Trainwreck was a brilliant film.
Yeah,
very funny film.
Very funny, and she does. But there are a couple of ones that are just kind of like this whole, like you said, contrived idea of why would you pretend to be pregnant because your friend is pregnant? I mean, I don't even understand that.
It's not really explained particularly well why she wants to pretend to be pregnant. Right. It's sort of like a Saturday Night Live sketch that's stretched out for an hour and a half. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's have a listen or a look to a trailer of Kind of Pregnant.
Do you ever tell such a big lie you don't know how to get out of it?
How's your pregnancy going?
Oh my God, so cute!
Yeah.
Hi. You ever dated a pregnant woman?
You're the least pregnant person I've ever.
Wow.
Yeah.
You wait till they're crowning.
Yeah, I want them to be like 2 weeks away from dropping.
Women don't share what it's like. It's so isolating.
How do you really feel during your pregnancy?
I'm angry. I ate a cupcake out of the trash can last night.
How far along are you, judging by your facial bloating? 5 months?
I've been a freaking wreck. I would be too if my ankles were that big.
I think that'll probably stay in the Netflix.
I think the film's actually funnier than I had to cut out a lot of the swearing.
Did you?
For that trailer clip.
You're trying to tempt me with
a lot of funny
foul
swearing.
language.
Yeah, there is a lot of funny swearing, mainly from Amy Schumer. The chemistry between her and Will Forte is very good as well. That kind of relationship side of things is quite funny.
Maybe I'm just miserable at the moment. I don't want anything to cheer me up.
I mean, it's not the most knockabout great comedy that you're ever going to see, but it's better than a lot of romantic comedies. I was certainly better than Bridget Jones.
Oh, is it really? That's embarrassing, isn't it? Yeah. How long do you think Bridget Jones will be at the cinemas?
It'll be there for a couple of weeks. It's done really well. It's broken British box office records for the opening weekend of a rom-com. As long as you don't adjust it for inflation, because the original Bridget Jones did better. If you...
I mean, the original Bridget Jones was this is the first. Yeah. I mean, I read the book, loved the book. It was new. It was a fresh idea of having diary pages, and it was easy to read and all of that. And of course, I was probably about that age, and it sort of resonated with me and all of my girlfriends, and we liked it. And the film was great. I thought Renée Zellweger was great, and then it just keeps going on and on and on, and that's where I lose faith in it. And the books also, you know.
It's the law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, it really is.
Unless you can really progress an idea.
There's no point.
Yeah.
And it's the same gags and the same story, just in a different time zone.
Yeah.
Which is a real shame, because the original was absolutely genius. Sorry, not sorry that I made you watch it, because it's just funny watching your face. Thank you very much indeed, John Hearn there, who's a filmmaker, broadcaster and talk film reporter. Right, stay where you are, because Sam Fowles is next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, it is Petrie here with you, and for the next hour we are in the company of Sam Fowles, who is a barrister and commentator. Hello.
Hi there.
We've got practically matching glasses. Very cute. Sam, before we get into the papers, this is a question that I've kind of struggled with over the years, and that is, should we be allowed to sue the NHS? Because it seems like I used a pothole theory earlier on. So you get a pothole, you drive your car through it and you damage your car, and you sue the council and you get the money to pay for the damage on your car, but then they can't afford to fix the pothole. So the next car comes along and gets damaged in the same pothole, they sue the council, and now they can't fix two potholes. And I kind of see that in the same way. We've seen these compensations claims double in the last 10 years. And is that because the more money we take out of the NHS in terms of these compensation payouts means there's less money to treat the next person or to have that doctor on call to do that cancer scan, we're suing ourselves. We're sort of taking money out of a system that is there to benefit us all. However, they still need to be corrected for mistakes that they make.
Yeah, I think the law of negligence, and that's what we're talking about here, medical negligence. The law of negligence exists to make sure medical negligence doesn't happen. Now, if there's not a deterrent, if the law of negligence is just saying, oh, well, you shouldn't negligently treat a patient, but nothing's really going to happen to you.
But nothing happens to the individuals, does it really? Hardly ever. The surgeon that maybe did something wrong.
People get struck off for medical negligence. I mean, there's a whole branch of the legal profession that specialises in striking off or indeed defending surgeons or doctors in other areas who are negligent. But it also means that if something is done wrong to you, if someone doesn't treat you in the way that you're owed, then you get recompense for it. And unless we have those things, then the law of negligence is just guidelines. It's basically pointless. Now, the question about if are we taking money from ourselves, I don't think that even the largest payouts are really impacting on the scale that the NHS is underfunded. This is sort of, you're looking at
the NHS is currently on £192.6 billion for this year. I don't see that as being underfunded, frankly.
Well, it is. It's underfunded per person, and so when we talk about NHS funding, everyone talks about the big number, right? The headline figure, and everyone talks about the fact that it's gone up, and it has gone up. But then, so has the number of people in the country. When there's more people in the country, it costs more money to run a national health service. And the increases per person have been significantly less over the past 10, 15 years than they have been in the past, than what was considered necessary to basically keep up with demand. So that's what we mean when we say the NHS is underfunded.
Whatever money is taken out of the NHS is money taken away from the front line, right? Any money that's taken out from that. And if you do get a situation where you'll have surgeons who may be risk adverse, and maybe decide they don't want to do certain surgeries because they're afraid of being sued and afraid of being struck off or afraid of this coming back to bite them. We're in danger then of becoming America in terms of surgeons doing that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. And this is our NHS, and while I do think that people who have the wrong limb removed, of course, and then spend the rest of their lives in a situation where they need care or they need help or support, then there should be recompense. But maybe it should come from a different budget. Maybe it should come from doctors having insurance. Maybe it should come from that rather than directly from the NHS.
I think there's definitely an argument for that. I don't think that it really makes doctors less risk averse in a necessary way, because the way that law of negligence works, it doesn't just say, well, you did a risky surgery, so therefore, it's on you, you take the consequences. What a court in a negligence claim will look at is the standard of care over the course of a period, and whether the standard reached the level that is required. So it will look at the basic guidelines for that particular area. So it won't just say, well, you did a risky surgery. It will say, did you do a proper risk assessment? Did you then follow the correct procedures when you were doing this surgery? And you may get a case, and there have been many cases, where something has gone wrong, but all of the guidelines have been followed, all of the risks have been assessed, everyone that was involved was properly qualified, and it's been said, well, look, everyone did their job, everyone did it properly. It's unfortunate this happened.
There's no claim.
But there's no claim. The claims succeed when someone doesn't do their job, when someone doesn't do a proper risk assessment, when someone isn't properly qualified or doesn't follow the proper guidance.
But how is it then agreed in that assessment who was ultimately responsible? I mean, we've seen over and over again social services mess up and nobody takes full. There seems to be a whole chain of people where nobody seems to take responsibility, and that's what I was talking about when I was saying, look, who will take that responsibility? Because in the NHS there will be people, and we know there are people still working in the NHS, because sadly they go on and do it again and then we find out about it, that have been consistently, it would appear, to be negligent, and they're still in their job. They haven't been struck off. Or maybe it was a nurse who isn't there anymore, or maybe it was a porter, or maybe it was, I mean, who takes that responsibility? Because when you're under a big umbrella like that, it seems that nobody takes responsibility.
Yeah, and I don't think that's an NHS thing. I think that's in my career, I found any company, any
but
group,
we sue the NHS. That's what I'm saying. We don't sue the individuals.
We sue the NHS as the person. Should we be able to sue the individual? Maybe there's an argument for that. What I think there is an argument for, though, is much better investigatory powers for things like inquests. And so this, I can speak from personal experience here, because I've done a lot of inquests, which is investigating how and why someone died, and you're constantly sort of faced with limitations into how deeply you can investigate. Now, what I would and it is inquests will look at the individual decisions that were made. Now they're not courts, they're not negligence courts or criminal courts, so they don't convict someone, but they do come up with or they can come up with a report saying, look, Dr. X made this decision, and this decision was a direct cause of the death. And I think we need to really look very carefully at our inquest system, actually, and say, look, is it delivering what we need it to deliver, or do we need to give it more hard-edged powers to be more aggressive in investigating things? There's arguments against that as well.
Yeah, and the other thing is, of course, that when you're looking at negligence, there will be people listening right now who were too late for a cancer scan, or they had a GP say, look, I think you're fine, go and take some aspirin and lie down. Is that negligence? I mean, this is also the difficult thing, isn't it? How do you prove negligence? I mean, I would say, well, my doctor was negligent because they didn't send me for a scan. But in his or her view, at the time, he didn't or she didn't think I needed one. So is that negligence, or I don't know where the line is even drawn?
Yeah, well, the line is drawn. What the court asks is, what is the duty of care in this situation?
Right.
And we acknowledge that a duty of care differs in different situations, right? So if I'm driving down the road, my duty of care is to take reasonable care not to run someone over, right? Obviously, that is a very different standard to if I'm a surgeon who's doing heart surgery, because then I've got a much higher duty of care. So the court will look at the individual circumstances and say, right, we've got a surgeon who's doing heart surgery. What is the level of the duty of care? Well, we can expect them to have a high level of expertise. We can expect them to keep up with the latest procedures. We can expect them to do a proper risk assessment. We can expect them to follow the decision tree that is written down, and there are published procedures that they have to follow. We can expect them to do that. And so
but then
that's where the test is.
Don't you get GPs then on the flip side of that, who again are so risk adverse, even if they think that I'm perfectly healthy, he's going to go, well, go for a scan anyway. And then you overload the system with the worried well.
Yeah, I think in the case of a GP, in some of the cases that you've mentioned, we've discussed before. We've discussed the cases of women who have symptoms and those symptoms are ignored.
Yeah.
Now, there is definitely going to be some of those cases that do rise to the standard of negligence. There are going to be some of those cases that are just mistakes, and there are going to be some of those cases where actually the GP is right as well.
Mistakes do happen, and where human beings are involved, mistakes happen. And can you always legitimately sue for a mistake?
Not always. The question is, should the mistake have been allowed to happen? Did they take reasonable care? Is this someone who is working to the absolute best of their ability, doing everything right, doing everything that they're supposed to do, and just something really unfortunate happens? Or is this someone who is just coasting through, doing the bare minimum, and letting things slide? That's the difference.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that you've got a patient, and some doctors will decide, no, look, there's nothing wrong with her, she's just, making it up. And another one will go, well, I think she's making it up, but just in case, I'm going to send her for the test that she wants, or the expensive scan, or the 2-week cancer pathway, which is pointless. And then that clogs up the system for somebody who genuinely needs that care. It's very.
I think my objection would be more with a system that is not able to cope with that. I think surely, if if it's an ingrown toenail.
Don't knock them, they're really painful.
Well, look, I broke my finger playing rugby a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't go to the hospital about it initially, but a few weeks later I realised that it's a really weird shape, and I went to the doctor and said, look, do I need to go for a scan? And he said, maybe you do. Like, if we were being super careful about this, maybe you do. But also, it's your little finger. If you can bend it all right, you can basically use it. And why don't you just give it another few weeks and see if it's okay?
Yeah.
It's my little finger, right? If, however, that wasn't my little finger, if I was saying, well, look, I think I've got a lump on my testicle.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, well, it might be nothing, or it might be something. It can be completely benign. Let's leave. No, you want to err on the side of caution in something like that.
Yeah.
So I think being a bit risk averse for serious things like cancer, like heart palpitations or something like that, then surely much better to go for a test that you don't need than it is to not go for a test that you do need, right?
Yeah, no, I guess. I just think it's such a quagmire, and it can't be helped, it can't be being helped with money taken out and people being sued and things like that. But on the other hand, they do need to somebody needs, but we're paying for the crime. Yet again, the doctor or the surgeon, they may be struck off and then they can go and work somewhere else, or become a consultant somewhere, and it's us paying our own bills. That's anyway. I think it's fascinating. I've always been interested in that as a push-pull in terms of whether we do that or not. Talking of broken fingers, Gabriella, she's broken her thumb.
Oh God, no, that's an important one.
Yeah, she's broken her thumb. That's my setup producer. Yeah, she was cycling. And took a tumble, and she's broken her thumb.
There's people associated with the show shouldn't be allowed to cycle.
Should not be allowed, because you had an
injured.
accident the other day. Nobody is allowed to cycle anywhere. Right, let's have a look at the papers, Sam. And just quickly, I like to look at an American paper in these reviews, just because I think it's fascinating what's going on over there, not always in a good way. But we've got the Arizona Republic here, and President's Day protests have happened. Hundreds of people gather, and these are all over the country, actually, and the crowds in New York were massive. No Kings on President's Day protest against Trump, and a lot of it against Musk, who is, they're saying, well, we didn't vote for him.
Yeah, I think this paper is extraordinary. We're looking at this front page, and this page is just a story of a democracy in decline. And you can understand why people are protesting, because in a very short time, Trump has sort of fundamentally undermined basic things that are the essence of democracy. And one of the things that is mentioned that was mentioned a lot in the protest was removing birthright citizenship. And now, Hannah Arendt, who's a scholar who wrote a lot about dictatorship in the shadow of Nazi Germany, she wrote about citizenship as the right to have rights. So removing citizenship is the first step in removing people's rights and dehumanising people, dehumaning them, and excluding people. So that's a really worrying thing. They're also mentioning what Trump has said about Gaza, where he said he wants to turn it into a beachside resort.
Well, the Arab nations have strictly said no, haven't they? They came back yesterday.
And rightly so, because it's ethnic cleansing.
Yeah.
It's not just a war crime; it's a crime against humanity.
They don't want to go, and that's the point.
To suggest that the ethnic cleansing is now the official policy of the United States. I mean, I suppose it was once before in terms of the American Indians, but at least it's been a century since that, is another extraordinary thing. And then you look across the paper and you see a court case about the firing of a Justice Department official. Looks fairly innocuous until you find that he is the person charged with protecting whistleblowers. So these are the people that reveal government wrongdoing. And Trump is removing the protection for whistleblowers, people who call out corruption, who call out criminality within the government. And then you go down the page a little bit and you find Doge seeking access to restricted IRS data. So that's Elon Musk's department. Now, we should pause here and say, is it Elon Musk's department? Is it someone else's department? We don't know.
Because it's not even a proper department because it wasn't ratified by Congress.
But in court filings today, the administration has claimed that Elon Musk doesn't run Doge, but they won't tell the court who actually runs. So you've got essentially a secret department that is being given everyone's tax data in the United States.
And they've already had all the social security data, and I can't believe actually what I'm seeing when I look across at the moment. It is extraordinary. But then on the other side, you get, well, Doge has saved the American taxpayer $55 billion so far, but they've done that with a sledgehammer, and they don't know what the repercussions of that are going to be. You know, returning education to the state by state basis, that can't be good. You know, and getting rid of vet stuff for the old soldiers and stuff, that can't be good. The repercussions of that can't be good. Cutting Medicaid and Medicare, okay, that'll save you money, but that can't be good. Well, I mean, you could do it here. You could save 137 billion if you just cut out all pensions.
Well, and that's the thing.
But then what are the repercussions of that?
These so-called savings are not really savings.
No.
They are just changing where it lies on the balance sheet. So you say, yes, we're saving all this money, but it means you make costly mistakes, so you have to pay more in the long run, and that was the lesson from austerity.
Like getting rid of the nuclear workers. Brilliant move.
But also, it just means, like, sure, your tax dollars might not pay for someone's for Medicaid, but it just means you've got to pay your tax, plus you've got to pay a higher bill for Medicaid. And actually, with things like healthcare, with things like care of veterans, with things like education, you get to benefit from economies of scale.
Yeah.
So if we all put our money together to fund healthcare, then our healthcare is cheaper for everyone. We pay less per person. If we all pay for healthcare privately, we all pay significantly more per person than we otherwise would. So it just means that what is actually happening with Doge is transferring American taxpayers' money into the pockets of more billionaires. Because who's going to benefit from cuts to Medicaid? Drugs companies, investors, the very people who are funding Trump.
The GOP released their tax plans, and the tax plans were to tax the middle classes in America, and they want to save 1.4 trillion, I think, to give to the wealthy. Anybody who's earning over $450,000 a year gets their tax cut.
And that's exactly what Trump did last time as well. It made the vast majority of people poorer. It's incidentally what Liz Truss tried to do in the UK and crash the economy. So this is the irony, right? They talk about freedom, these people. Constantly, the GOP talks about freedom, and then allows unaccountable billionaires to have all your tax data. to take away your birthright
Why does he
citizenship.
need IRS data? I mean, this is the thing, that is so personal.
Well, that's the point. It's because the more data is the currency, right? Data is where the money is. So the more data you get on individual voters, the easier they are to control. Now, that might not be sort of control in a kind of traditional Orwell sense, you know, the telly screen in your room, but it might be control as in directing you to buy certain things, or use certain products, or act in a certain way. And we know that this is how these things work. That's how that's Facebook's business model. Facebook doesn't make that much money from, you know, just stuff in itself, providing a service. What it makes money from is getting your data and selling that data to companies. The same with Twitter, except it doesn't actually make that much money because Elon Musk has halved its value because he's such a great businessman. Brilliant. But, you know, if he was any good at his job, it's how it would work. Yeah. And so giving unaccountable... and also data is sort of, in the 21st century, our most precious possession. It's
and yet
who we are.
We give it away.
And but we're sort of forced to give it away for free. Yeah. And so essentially what they're doing is the same thing they did with the oil barons in the 1900s. They're giving our most precious resources to a bunch of unaccountable, in my view, slightly dodgy billionaires.
Well, that's why it's called Doge, isn't it? Dodge. Quick break, but Sam and I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is Sam Fowles, who's a barrister and commentator. Sam, let's have a look at the papers for Wednesday, and 3 million universal credit claimants not hunting for a job. More than 3 million people are claiming Britain's main benefit without any obligation, so there's no obligation for them to look for a job, twice as many as who are on it and seeking a job. But that'll be because they've been signed off for some reason, will it?
Yeah, this is a bit of a slightly misleading headline, I think, because when we say universal credit, people think of job seeker allowance, right? That was sort of the main thing it was supposed to replace. But actually, universal credit replaced everything. Yeah. So you just have different elements of universal credit. And so what this is talking about is the sickness benefit element. So essentially, if you're too ill to work, That doesn't mean it's not a really important story, though, because when you look into the detail, we've gone from 1.5 million in 2022 to 3 million now.
It's completely unsustainable.
That's a lot of people too ill to work. That's a real problem. Why are there so many people who are not able to work?
Well, I mean, the NHS is a problem, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's chicken and egg, isn't it, really? So the NHS is a problem. Some of them will just be shirkers, some of them will.
It's inevitable.
But inevitable. In a system where they don't ever have to look for work is quite extraordinary, because people do get better, particularly those with mental health issues. But then you can't say to somebody, right, you've got a mental health issue. We're not America. Like, RFK suggesting that people with mental health issues go to work on a farm for a couple of 3 or 4 years to get better without drugs. Sounds vaguely familiar from some years ago now.
Very one flew over the cuckoo's nest.
Yeah,
isn't
it's a very strange. Yeah, but RFK is the man in charge, and he says that people with mental health issues should go and work on a farm somewhere. But anyway, it does seem it's a lot. I mean, it is unsustainable. But if those people really are unwell, then it's not like you can force them back into work. So what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I think there are very real problems with our benefit system, which is essentially that for a long time, we focused on people can't work, so this is the benefit they get. And then every government has tried to solve that problem by cutting benefits, and every government,
and that's what they're planning to do this time.
Come in and they cut benefits.
Yeah.
No one says, well, look, if you've got an injury that stops you from working, you're probably going to be waiting, 6 months, 8 months, a year, over a year to get treatment for that injury. So you're not going to be able to work for that long. You might be waiting that long just for a diagnosis. So, if we actually put resources into getting people better quicker, getting them back working again, well, that's going to cut down that figure. You've also got a mental health crisis, and I mean, there's lots of debates about it, and you can talk about the numbers, but there is a big core there that are in serious mental health trouble, particularly the younger generations. And I mean, when you think about what those generations have gone through, their entire lives have essentially been lived in an economic and political crisis, being constantly told that their futures are going down the drain,
can't afford a house, you'll never be able to buy a house, you'll never,
and having older generations, just set their futures on fire and then sort of blame them for it and go, oh, millennials, oh, Gen X. Like, it would be weird if they didn't have mental health problems, I think. But again, there's no national mental health service. There's no sort of joined up approach to think about, right, how are we going to genuinely treat this like a public health crisis? So it's no wonder these numbers are going up, because I'm sure there are some shirkers. I'm sure there are some people that don't need to be there.
Of course there are, and we hear about them all the time. These,
fundamentally, we're not treating the causes of the stuff that's making people ill. And if you don't treat those causes, more people are going to get ill, fewer people are going to be able to work.
And also, I think there is a case with the younger people who just have checked out because the social contract is broken. Young people have just checked out. They've just gone, oh, I feel depressed, I'm never going to buy a house, I'm never going to be able to afford a family, why should I bother working? And I suspect there are people, and I don't blame them for it. I don't particularly want to pay for them to spend their lives not working, but I don't blame them for it. But apparently, Reeves is looking at abolishing the highest category of universal credit health claims, known as a limited capacity for work or work-related activity, which grants claimants an extra $5,000 a year and frees them from any obligation to look for work. Ministers want to remove financial and practical incentives for being signed off sick, which have led to a rising number of falling into the highest category of incapacity benefit.
Yeah, I mean, that's saying we're not going to pay for people who are too ill to work doesn't make them better. This is the fundamental problem.
I would suspect it will do exactly the opposite.
Yeah, and I expect what it will do is exactly what we've been talking about, which is these things reverberate. It will put greater costs on carers, And so you'll find people that are able to work are taking on less work because they've got more care and responsibilities, which they have to do for free.
And also employers, I mean, they're not going to want to employ somebody who's going, I don't particularly want to work. I don't feel like it's worth it for me, or I'm depressed.
And the way this is framed is like, oh, you just sort of rock up and tick a box, and then suddenly you're on your, that higher category, $5,000 a year, off you go, good job. They go through so many really quite degrading tests and assessments. Like, you have to work seriously hard to prove that you are you're sick enough to get into that higher category, and then you have to keep proving it as well. You keep
but the people on these benefits now are the new favourite, people to beat up, aren't they? They're the new. Oh, look at them! They're taking all the money.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we do, and we do it really well in this country, unfortunately. Right, Sam, we're going to take a quick break, but we will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and good to have your company. With me is Sam Fowles, who's a barrister and commentator. Just finishing off the Times. The Pontiff has pneumonia in both lungs, so the Vatican, the Pope is very unwell. He's in hospital and he's cancelled all of his work that he had coming up, and they said he'll stay in hospital for as long as it takes. So
I hope he gets better.
Yeah, exactly. Typhoons may help to keep peace in Ukraine. This is British fighter jets could avert need for troops. Britain is exploring other ways of providing security guarantees to Ukraine. And I think this is probably in the background of Russia saying they won't allow troops. They certainly wouldn't allow NATO anybody from the NATO countries to wander the line. Russia making more demands than they've probably got any right to. But typhoons, we think.
Yeah, I think the debate about Russia always seems to happen on Putin's terms. So Russia said we won't accept it. Well, to be fair, Russia has unlawfully invaded another sovereign country.
I know.
What they will and won't accept
should be irrelevant.
Cannot be the most important thing here. And if pushing them back over the border means that we then have to commit troops to it, then I think that's something that is well worth doing, not just to solve that crisis but for the impacts across the world. Because as soon as, and this is, I'm sure we'll get on to the negotiations, but basically what the entire Western strategy seems to be at the moment is to reward Putin for breaking international law, reward Putin for unlawfully invading a sovereign country by giving him bits of it.
Yeah. I mean, it seems ridiculous to me. It seems ridiculous. But I tell you what was really interesting. I saw the Chinese delegation talking at the Munich summit, the Munich talks, and that was fascinating. I mean, in paraphrase, it was basically, China's here, we can be your friend, and and we can do all this stuff that at the moment you rely on from America, but don't forget we're here as well. Now that would be, I suggested that was a possibility. We'd lean more towards China yesterday, and was mocked for it, but it is a very real possibility.
But there's a real danger there as well, and this isn't a new strategy from China. This has, if you spend any time in any, pretty much any state in Africa, you will find that for years, that's Chinese what China has been saying to them. And so infrastructure is built with Chinese money, but also they rely on China for security, for banking, for industry, and so it means that China has, while the West is essentially being napping on this, really extended its sphere of influence. And it's doing the same thing with in respect of Ukraine and the power vacuum left by Trump. Now,
that's a real worry for Trump, though, because if China starts to make manoeuvres in the direction of pallying up, and I understand that Canada and China are in more talks now, because if Canada can't trade with its neighbour, where's it going to trade? It needs to trade somewhere, and so there's lots of talks going on across that way as well. Trump could find that he isolates America even more than he intends to.
Well, I think to understand Trump's foreign policy is you have to understand that it's all directed inwards. It's exactly the same thing we saw
he said that.
With the Brexit negotiations, right? All of the Brexit negotiation stances were about appeasing or ginning up one particular constituency in the UK. And it's the same. All of Trump's foreign policy pronouncements aren't aimed at the UK or China or Russia or Ukraine. They're aimed at ginning up an internal debate in the US. So it actually suits Trump for America to become isolated. It suits Trump for Americans to become poorer, because the way the debate goes is they're not going to blame him, they're going to blame immigrants or trans people or the deep state or the Soros conspiracy, or because the people who support Trump are now so sort of in this kind of fantasy land that they're conditioned to blame all of these invented enemies for the problems, which are the very, very simple economic problems, which is that they have been systematically made poorer by government and rich people, basically. But that's going to keep happening under Trump. Now, in terms of, I think China filling that gap, though, is really worrying, because China isn't, some sort of liberal saviour.
No, but benign saviour.
China is a brutal dictatorship, and one that is arguably committing a genocide as well right now with the Uyghur people. So I would be very is if we sort of saw China as an alternative to the United States.
My enemy's enemy is my friend.
Yeah, I think that is a really famous saying, though. But what goes behind that saying is an example of doing something stupid.
Yeah. But we're not adverse to doing that, are we? I don't look. Time will tell. With Trump, maybe being isolated is exactly what he needs and exactly what he wants and exactly what the American people want. So if that's what they want, they voted for it, and good luck to them. I think they're going to need it. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail quickly. Tory anger at judge who said criticising our ruling was unacceptable. Kemi Badenoch hit back at England's top judge last night as a row broke out over the right to criticise the judiciary.
Yeah, I think this is disgraceful and scary from both Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, because this is what we're seeing, politicians trying to decide who the law applies to. And this has obviously been spun by the tabloid press as being about the rights of some asylum seekers versus the rights of ordinary British people, and that is not true at all. This is about all our rights, because if one group, if the unpopular group, if the out group loses their rights, we all lose our rights. So that right to family life protects all of it. It protects all of our privacy. It protects all of us from government intrusion. Now, if what the sort of populist right has said is, well, look, here's some people that you don't like who are benefiting from that right. So get angry at them, get angry at the brown people, and then give up your rights as a result. But ultimately, what they're saying is give up your rights. And in terms of this specific story, you have politicians. Parliament is entitled to make the law. But once Parliament makes the law, it applies equally to everyone. And it is applied by judges who are objective and outside of politics. So it doesn't matter. Maybe it's politically convenient for Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer to have a go at asylum seekers. But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to the courts at all. They apply the law as it is. Now, so for Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch to say, oh, the judges got it wrong, they have no constitutional right to say that. They have no expertise to say that. And actually, Keir Starmer as a lawyer should do better there, because we ethically don't say that judges got it wrong. We might write an article saying this is how a different analysis of it and how it might be analysed in the future. We don't attack judges in public, because people have to have faith that judges are going to be independent, and politicians will allow judges to be independent, and they're going to be allowed to make objective decisions.
And apply the law, as you said, to everybody. Just quickly, the Sun newspaper, mayor in Mallorca says Meg's doing what she shouldn't oughta. Huh? So Meg's new logo bears a striking resemblance to the logo for Mallorca.
Yeah. Does anyone care?
No.
This is a private copyright dispute between
There's
two
a private copyright
individuals.
dispute, absolutely.
I mean, how much was a journalist paid to write that story? Seriously.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it is. Yeah, but some people will go, "Oh, naughty old Meg."
Yeah,
Have we got a star yet? Have we got a star newspaper?
There's only two genocides happening in the world at the moment.
I know, but
let's worry about what Meg's done.
I'm sorry. We've got to be balanced. The Daily Telegraph. Let's have a look at that. Zelensky could fall as a price of peace. US and Russia make provisional agreement for ceasefire, elections, and peace treaty. And I was talking to a Ukrainian MP earlier on, and saying that Russia is now questioning the validity of Zelensky being in charge and could even come to the peace talks. And he was saying, well, how could we have held an election? We're under attack. We've got 5 million people displaced, 7 million people internally displaced. It's not just, it's a whole process. We know that it is. But anyway, it looks like Zelensky could be thrown under a bus.
And this is what Russia has wanted for the whole time. You can go back to the Euromaidan protests, when Ukraine was governed by an autocratic, pro-Russian, corrupt regime, and the people of Ukraine rose up and forced them out, including, fantastically, 2 Ukrainian world champion heavyweight boxers who went and stood on the barricades with the Ukrainian people. And that was the start of this, that the Ukrainian people rejected Russian, effectively, overlordship and rejected a corrupt pro-Russian regime. That was 15 years ago, and that was the start of the whole process, the start of Putin's interference, the origins of Crimea, the origins of this invasion. And it seems like what Trump is saying is, look, we'll just reverse Euromaidan, we'll reverse this revolution of the Ukrainian people and put a corrupt pro-Russia, pro-Trump, maybe it's the same thing, regime back in its place.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel they're deliberately trying to humiliate him at the moment. That's never a good place to start a peace negotiation. All right, we've got to take a quick break, but Sam and I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Talk and it's Petrie here with you. Sam Fowles is with me, barrister and commentator, going through Wednesday's newspapers. The Guardian, I just quickly want to hit on this as well. Obesity blamed as rising life expectancy stalls. Life expectancy improvement is stalling across Europe, with England experiencing the biggest slowdown and experts blaming a mix of poor diet, mass inactivity and obesity. And that sort of takes us back to the whole welfare and the whole of the NHS. But I mean, there are many issues, aren't there, with health in this country? I would imagine that obesity is probably an issue to do with the horrible diet.
Yes.
And some of the horrible chemicals that we're eating.
There's got to be a huge amount, but it's also obesity is a function of poverty, because unhealthy food is cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that there's sort of this Arcadian fantasy of, yes, it's no problem if you're poor, just 30 pence and you can get apples off the trees and potatoes out the ground and cook all these gourmet meals. But actually, realistically, you can't. If you're poor, then you're probably
you may not even have an oven. You may only have a microwave.
Exactly.
You may only have, and there's a lot of people who are in white good poverty. They can't afford that, and so they buy ping meals, which are notoriously high in fats and sugars, and all the things and carbs, and that might fill up your family. They might make them feel full, but then they're hungry again later, and the food is just not good food.
That's it. And also, if you're in poverty, you're probably also time poor, because you've got precarious employment. You're spending all of your time filling in the forms to get your meagre benefits payment. So you have less. You don't have the time that sort of a middle-class person has to plan recipes or meal prep and things like that.
It is always very disappointing to me when people resort to that trope that, well, it's cheap, it's really cheap to buy healthy food. But like you said, you do need time to cook that. You know, I try and I will cook like a shepherd's pie or a lasagna or something. That'll feed me for the week because I'm knackered, right? I go home from this, I'm exhausted. There's no way. And even through the day, I don't feel my sleeping hours are weird. I'm up early to prep the program for the following night, but then I try and have another sleep. So eating and sleeping are not my friends, right? Until Friday. So I pre-cook, but it still will take me a decent amount of time to make the shepherd's pie or to make the lasagna or to make whatever, or the chili that I'm going to eat through the week. And I'm aware of that. And there are people, like you said, they've probably got 2 jobs. They might have 5 children. They might have 2 bedrooms. They might have children sleeping in the living room. You know, there are people who live like that. Yeah. And it's all very well to say, well, just buy some carrots and potatoes and make a soup. But if you haven't got the time and you haven't got the skill, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And cooking that sort of stuff is a skill as well. Yeah. And you know, I can't comment on what the is it still called food tech curriculum is now, but I certainly know at school what we learned to do was make cakes, because it was fun, and it was sort of, you know, it was a class of 35 kids, and it, you know, kept us busy for you know, for 80 minutes.
Yeah, when in my primary school, it was quite an old-fashioned C of E school. The headmaster's wife taught us how to cook, and it was always on a Friday. It sounds like it's something from the war years, right? But that was her job. She came and taught us that, and we learned how to make a roux, how to use steak meat, you know, mince meat, how to, you know, just do the basics. If you can make a roux and you can make, you've already got the makings of a lasagna there, a bit of pasta. So we were taught all the absolute basics, and I've never forgotten it, and it's been invaluable to me. And I taught my son the same thing.
And I didn't learn that stuff until I went to university, and I just had to, you know, figure it out because I did have the time, right? I was privileged and I didn't want to get fat, so I figured it out. Yeah. But I think and you know, the curriculum has actually changed even when I was at school to move away from these practical subjects, and it's more certainly under Michael Gove, and that his legacy it's about rote learning of really sort of traditional subjects.
No, I think cooking is fundamental. It's an absolute basic requirement, and so is being able to use a washing machine. I don't think I taught my son that very well. Anyway, let's have a look at. We've got to look at the Daily Star, haven't we? We've got to look at the Daily Star since I nagged my colleagues next door to get it for me. 60% of workers change into their PJs the second they walk through the door. And you went, oh yeah.
Oh, guilty.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely guilty. Not necessarily what I'm going to sleep in, but you know, you take off your suit and you put on your nice, comfy, baggy trousers with snowmen on them. That's ideal.
It may be too much information, but every woman I know, every single one, when they get home, they take their bras off. Because we've been sucked in, pinched in, you know, all of that. And they aren't the most comfortable things. And so that's the moment where you go, oh God, yeah. See. Yeah.
Everyone's nodding. I've
Even the boys are nodding.
The boys take their bras
off too.
Why not? I've got a confession on this, actually, which is that I don't think I'm the only person to say this, I have done a trial with my pyjamas on the bottom with full. It was during COVID, everything was online, and I had my full wig, gown, high collar, bands, everything on the top, and then my lovely comfy PJs on the bottom. And I won that trial, and my client was very happy.
And you didn't stand up and go, yay! But you see, I did that once. I was doing a podcast or something, and I couldn't be bothered to get dressed. So I did the same thing. I put on a shirt and, you know, looked and just sat there and had my laptop there. And then the dog or the cat or something did something. So I got up and walked back, and I forgot I didn't have I just had pants on. Yeah, rookie mistake. But a lot of TV presenters do sit with, you know, shorts on in the summer or, you know, scruffies underneath. I think we're just wearing a scruffy pair of jeans.
Yeah. No, I think that's quite common.
But not pyjamas. I don't own pyjamas. Do you have? Who owns pyjamas?
Yeah, I've got loads of pyjamas.
Sam, has yours got Star Trek on it, or you have Star Wars pyjamas? Yeah, I knew it. See, I know my team.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly at university, a lot of people went to. It was like actually was the style, right? This was the noughties, so I assume fashion has moved on since then. But people used to wear pajamas and rugby shirts. That was like pajama, like tartan pajama bottoms and rugby shirts. Yeah, to your lectures. That was like the cool thing to wear.
I can't see you as being one of the cool kids. Were you one of the cool kids?
I don't think I've ever been one of the cool kids. I've definitely tried to be, but I don't think it's ever happened.
But have you ever seen people in pyjamas at the shops? I mean, that's a step too far, isn't it? I have seen people in pyjamas at the shop, or maybe they were just wearing.
I've seen that. We have a coffee shop in our building, and I've got to confess, I did go down and buy a muffin in my pyjamas the other day when we hadn't done the shopping and so we're out of breakfast food.
Standards are slipping. I mean, that is really bad when you can't be bothered. I mean, I just shove on a pair of Uggs and usually just a comfortable pair of jeans and a jumper. But I don't sleep in pyjamas.
Well, Uggs.
I find them really uncomfortable.
Uggs are the other thing that are getting loads of hate now.
I know.
I
know.
I've got Ugg slippers and they're the most comfortable things ever.
So comfortable.
But the Uggs as a brand gets so much hate from sort of fashionista people.
I know, because they think it's all sloppy. But I just think they are the most comfortable thing. And they are a legitimate slipper you can go out in. Because mine are Ugg boots. And I do wear them as slippers, but you can legitimately go, no, these are actually boots. So I can go out in them.
I just think it's like getting your feet hugged. Who wouldn't want that?
Oh, I know, who wouldn't want that? Millions of workers put their pyjamas on the moment they get home, and half of us wear our gym jams all day when working from home.
I think you've got to have your sleeping gym jams and your working gym jams.
That sounds all too complicated.
Because I have my gym jams.
What about those onesies that look like baby grows for adults? Has anybody got those?
I used to have one of those. I bought a red one too because I dressed up as Iron Man for Halloween, and but I couldn't actually find an Iron Man costume, so I found a red onesie and a mask, and that was my Iron Man costume.
Well, it's like a Teletubby with a mask on.
Yeah, it wasn't very. I didn't say it was a good costume.
No, it really wasn't a very good costume. On that note, we've got all of Sam's secrets now. Thank you very much for coming in. I know that we're going to be chatting to you in a bit anyway, but thank you very much for coming in. And at least you weren't wearing your pyjamas, so thank you. Oh, I don't know. He hasn't stood up, actually. He might be wearing his pyjamas. Who knows? Right, coming up, we're going to be talking about the NHS. And is it right that we are able to sue the NHS? Now, of course, it's our money, so we're suing and paying ourselves the money because we've given the money to the government to put into the NHS. The government doesn't have any money, it's our money. It's not the doctors that pay, that may have made the mistake. They may pay by losing their jobs, or they may pay by being suspended for a while, but it doesn't come out of their pocket. So is that really a disincentive to mess up again? What is the right way to do this? Because £3 billion coming out of the NHS budget doesn't sound like it's sustainable. That has increased, that has doubled in the last 10 years. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you for the next hour. And just before we get to the phone-in, which we will get to in a little while, I've got some breaking news here, which I thought you'd be really interested in, because I was interested in this, and I do have some questions from the lawyer who was part of writing this law. So it's Sam Fowles is with me, and this was embargoed until midnight, which is why we couldn't talk about it before midnight. But in Wales, the Senate Standards Committee published its report, that's today, recommending making it a criminal offence for politicians to deliberately lie to the public. Now, a lot of people hearing that would be jumping for joy and going, well, that is brilliant, because we're sick of being lied to, right? But this is fundamental, as you've been saying, you've drafted this proposal, you've been involved in this law, that this is the only way to rescue democracy, really.
Yeah, because democracy relies on public debate.
Yeah.
And public debate is only effective if we're all basically telling the truth. You can argue anything if you just make it up. But you can only have which people do, and this is the problem, that politicians have realised that it's very easy to win debates if you just make things up, and so they're making things up, and there is no incentive not to at the moment. There are, of course, politicians are already not allowed to lie. There's already rules that say parliamentarians, MPs, members of the Senate must correct the record if they lie, but those rules are almost impossible to enforce and are not really enforced. And there's only been real enforcement on one occasion that I can think of in the past few years, which is Boris Johnson
proroguing Parliament.
So what we need, and what I've argued that we need, is a genuine disincentive for politicians lying, and a genuine incentive to engage in public debate in good faith and to base your arguments on truth. Now, lots and lots of professions, including my own as a barrister, have truth-telling regulatory requirements. If I lie and don't correct the record, then I can lose my job. And I think that's absolutely right. And so I think, and what this proposal is, and it was something the Welsh government committed to in the summer. The Senate Standards Committee has been investigating it, looking at is it feasible, looking at how we do it for the last 6 months. What they've committed to is saying, look, if an independent tribunal finds that a politician has deliberately misled the public, then they should be able to be sanctioned by losing their job. And so we, the public, get the chance to elect someone else who isn't going to lie to us.
The thing is, though, that I mean, many people, when I've talked about politicians lying and things, they always say, look, a manifesto is a absolute telling point here, right? So you draft your manifesto. It's not off the cuff. You've made your decisions what you're going to do, and then they don't follow through. The problem is that where is the burden of proof on a lie? Because that can be subjective. Right, so you can have a situation where a prime minister promises that they're going to look after the working people, and then eventually they'll say, well, what is a working person? I didn't lie. I just shifted the goalpost as to what I see now is a working person. Right, so it is very difficult to prove an intentional lie. You've also got people who say, we're not going to cut taxes, and then they do, and then they say, yes, but I meant it at the time. It wasn't a lie. Yeah. It's just circumstances have changed. So surely it's although in its soul it's really purposeful, and I completely agree with it, is it not going to be impossible to hold people to account?
No, I don't think so. And I think actually the solution to what you're talking about is clear rules. What are you allowed to what are you allowed to say as opinion, and what are you allowed to say as fact? And so this proposal, it only applies to statements of fact. And so that's not a promise saying, I'm going to look after the working people. That's saying the immigration backlog has fallen under my government, when actually it's risen.
It hasn't, right.
You know, the economy grew by 12% in the last quarter, when actually it shrunk. And so these are the not promises, not statements of opinion, not grandstanding. These are literally the framework of reality in which we're trying to have this debate. Now, what I propose, and this is with my hat as director of the Institute for Constitutional and Democratic Research, which is a constitutional think tank, what it sounds like. And we brought together lots of different academics, lots of different lawyers, practitioners. We debated this, how we're going to make it happen. And what we came up with is the two-stage model. And that is where if a politician says something that a reasonable person would understand to be a statement of fact, and that is not true, then an independent tribunal can ask them to correct the record. If, having been told by an independent tribunal, what you said is not true, please correct the record, and then refuse to correct the record, well then that is clearly deliberate deception. And that's the point at which politicians should be sanctioned.
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. But the other question I have before I let you go is, they have to vote for this. Politicians have to. Are they really going to vote for this?
Yeah, I think it's actually in politicians' interests, because I know, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone else, which is sort of saying, oh, politicians, they're liars. But actually, I've had the privilege of working with many politicians who are good people, who are honest people, and want to make this better. But the thing is, having a discourse that is dominated by lies is against their interests, because they get tarred with the same brush. If you are a genuinely committed politician who wants to get things right, who wants to win the debate as well, then it's in your interest to vote for this, because what this does is this eliminates the people that spoil public debate, the people that mislead the public, the people that drag the reputation of politicians down. So I think that decent politicians have a real incentive to vote for this, and essentially clear the field so we can have a genuine debate in this country, rather than what we do right now is just we'd spend the whole time discussing what is the latest bit of lie, bit of misleading
is it true,
propaganda.
is it not true? Well, listen, I mean, I think this is the right direction, isn't it? And it's the only direction that we can go in with democracy, because it is in danger at the moment from all the lies and the stuff that goes on. So good luck with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sam Fowles there. Right, got to take a break, but I'll be back in a minute with the phone in.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. Isn't that brilliant? I mean, that just literally, that story broke at midnight, and I happen to have the author of it in the studio. I wonder what you think about that as well. Do you think they're going to vote for it? I don't think they will. I think Sam's probably a glass half full guy, whereas I'm really cynical. But to stop politicians from lying, what a brilliant idea, if it can be done. Zip up their mouths. But that's what we're talking about this morning is about the NHS. A £3 billion NHS compensation bill as payouts double in a decade. So the NHS has been forced to pay out this compensation for botched procedures and substandard care. And this is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy as far as I can see it, because the more money you take out of the NHS, the less good it's going to be, and the more people will end up being injured by the NHS, and then the more people will sue, and then the more money comes out of the NHS. Do you see what I mean? I wonder if this is the right way of doing it. And we are fundamentally suing ourselves. We give the money to the government gives the money to the NHS, we go to the NHS, we get injured by the NHS, and then we sue the NHS with the money that we've already given them, and you take that money out. So how does that work? Should we be allowed to sue the NHS? I mean, my thinking about it is that individual doctors should have the insurance, that we sue them if they've been found to be negligible, that you sue the doctor, surely. Because otherwise it's just like with water companies, they mess up, we pay the bill. Councils mess up, we pay the bill. You know, and on it goes. We're just constantly paying for people's mistakes all the time. Look at Birmingham Council. You know, they were the ones that messed up. They didn't pay equal pay to women in their employ. And now the residents of Birmingham have got to pay an extra 20% on their council tax to cover what the council did wrong. Did a single councillor have to delve into their own pocket? No. I think Birmingham they've just voted themselves a pay rise as well. So if we're suing the NHS, why aren't we suing the doctor? If it's the NHS that pays the bill, is that the right way of going about it? Have you ever had to sue the NHS? Have you ever been in a position where you felt that your treatment was substandard and you're considering it? And what was that like to sue the NHS? Give me a call. I'd love to hear from you on this. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate. And you can text the word talk and then your message to 87222. Rachel has said, great idea, Sam, but much of the sinners will probably never speak again, says Rachel, in terms of them lying or not. Let's talk to Paula, who's in Halifax. Paula, good morning.
Oh, good morning, Petrie.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
How's you?
Yeah, you know, not too bad for a Wednesday.
Oh dear, but no, this yeah. I don't know if I agree with you on the actual suing of the doctors, because I think they work so hard, they're overworked and underpaid. If they make a fault, though, then it's their fault. It's not the actual NHS. I'm sort of 50-50 with it, either way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the NHS is, will be providing the workspace, if you like. So the doctors could easily say, well, look, you know, we were understaffed, we were overstretched, you haven't bought the right equipment, I wasn't able to follow that test through properly. You know, maybe it wasn't the doctor's fault, although the doctor made the wrong decision. The doctor could say, no, that was the NHS's fault, it wasn't my fault. You see, this is really complicated.
It is really complicated. I mean, I adore my granddaughter. She's 8. And if she got rushed into hospital and they made a mistake on her, I would go absolutely mad.
Yeah. And you would want to sue?
Oh, God, yeah.
But you see, this is what I don't... People... I mean, I get it if somebody's injured and they need financial support for the rest of their lives. I understand that. But a lot of people say, look, I've sued, but not for the money, but to make sure this doesn't happen again, right?
Yeah, well, I'm 50-50 with that as well, because if my granddaughter died, I wouldn't give a toss about the money. I just want my granddaughter back.
Exactly. So if somebody dies as well, the payout would be less, ironically, than somebody who was injured and needed a lifetime of care.
Yeah, exactly.
But would you? I mean, this is the thing. Do you sue? I think my brain is going, well, if we're only suing to make them learn a lesson, is there another way of doing that without taking money out of the NHS for the next person's granddaughter?
Yeah. Do you know what? I actually don't know how to answer that.
Because when I hear people say, well, we're suing not for the money but to teach them a lesson, I often go, well, then why take the money?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I won't be interested in the money. I just want my granddaughter back.
Which you couldn't have, but you'd also want to make sure that they didn't do what they did to your granddaughter, right?
I'd be absolutely seething. And my heart would be broken for the rest of my days. And I guess you want someone to blame. And I guess everybody wants someone to blame.
Yeah. And if the whole system is wrong, then you blame the system. And then, but I don't know why that always comes down to money. I think that's what it is with me.
I don't know, neither.
Why is money the way to teach them a lesson? Why would, getting 200 grand or whatever it is, teach them a lesson? Because that just digs another hole in the NHS budget.
Well, I won't want £2.
No, exactly.
Want my granddaughter back.
Yeah. So I wonder if there are cases where we want lessons learned, where you can, I don't know, opt for a different system, that you opt not to have the money, but you opt to have a public inquiry, or that'd be more expensive, or you opt for the findings to be made public.
I'd opt for that, the public inquiry as to what happened to my granddaughter, should that ever happen, God forbid.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean,
I wouldn't be interested in the money. What's money? Money can't buy you happiness.
No.
It can't buy you your health, and I've learned that a long time ago.
I mean, I sort of get it why people do, but I don't know why it's always that, isn't it? And the bigger the money, the better you feel about it.
I don't know why people do that, to be honest with you. I really don't. Because it's like, well, you've lost your loved ones for whatever reason. You're never going to get them back. God, I'm really sorry about that. But why would you want to sue the NHS when it's absolutely stretched to its limit as it is?
Yeah.
And, and I've been in hospital many, many times, as you know.
Yeah.
And the staff have been absolutely amazing with me. Amazing.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a different pathway we can take. I mean, money where people have been injured and they need financial support for the rest of their lives, I completely accept that. I completely see that. But when it's, like you said, somebody dying where no money is going to make that better, right? No money is going to fix that problem. Then maybe there's an option to sue the NHS, but for something else. Right, to say, look, I want this made public, I want it in the newspapers, I want that doctor to be retrained, I want to see the retraining, etc., 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 right?
Yeah. I mean, I just don't really agree with suing the NHS. I think they're on the knees as it is. And I just think they absolutely try their utmost. I mean, what do you call them? The carers who were not qualified to sort of, they're not qualified nurses. You know, they were coming to take my BP every 15 minutes. They were going round again. And when I was in resus for sepsis last year, I was in there for 12 hours, and those nurses and doctors worked absolute wonders with me, and I was absolutely on my knees.
And you know what, Paula? Where there are human beings, there are mistakes, but it just depends whether that was negligence or a genuine mistake. And where negligence is, you want that nurse or that doctor or the porter or whoever it is to have to go through retraining and not be allowed back to work until they pass, you know, whatever it is, so to make sure it doesn't happen again, rather than get financial compensation.
Yeah. I think the difference is if you lose someone like a child or a teenager to whatever illness, I don't know how people would be able to cope with that, because I wouldn't be able to.
Oh no, I don't even let my brain go there, Paula, with my boy.
That's exactly what I'm saying. But then when you look at the other half of it, say like an elderly resident who had a stroke, and if they'd have injected her at a certain point, then she wouldn't have died. I mean, you can make your mind go mad.
That is very true, and I don't there are no certainties with health either. I don't know. I think it's very. I don't know. It does my brain in this subject. I don't know why I did it to myself. Paula, thank you. Great to talk to you as usual. I hope you're feeling much better. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Hi, Robert.
Hi, Petrie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I think, in answer to your question, I think you're going to open up a whole can of worms. I mean, there are professional claimants, and it's going to be much like asylum seekers, where you're going to get the ambulance chasing lawyers. There's going to be money to be made out of it.
There are already ambulance chasing medical lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, I had private health for 30 years. So, you know, I didn't get it for nothing. I got it through my wife's company, and it was quite expensive. But I believe, really, if you can afford private health, then you should have it. I think it should take the brunt off of the NHS.
So the NHS, you think, should be pretty much means tested?
Well, I've done some research. There's 8 million people in this country have got private health insurance. 8 million. That's 8 million beds that they're not using. As simple as that. And I take it that most of them people are still working, so they're paying a full stamp. So what you should do really is, for all them beds that they're not using, these poor souls, as a result, are having their pension, having their eating allowance taken away, and they should put. You know, as we're talking now, there's people dying in hospital because they've had their eating allowance taken away, or they can't get into a care home, or they need an operation. Put them in a private hospital. You know, there's 8 million people who are paying private health who ain't using their bed. And that's why I used to say to my mates at work, hang on a minute, I'm paying for my bed, and yet I'm not using it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it works like that either. I mean, people who've got private healthcare tend to be healthier as well, because they've made a decision to spend a significant amount of money on healthcare, so they tend to be more healthy. They seem to be of a higher, earnings.
Well, it saved my life.
Bracket.
I mean, I didn't know at the time. I had a thing called diverticulitis, but I didn't go and have it.
What is that?
It's where you've got a crease in the bowel.
Oh, right? That sounds nasty.
It really was. And I ain't going to say the hospital, and they had me in for a week, and they said, no, you're getting better. What had happened was my bowel perforated, I was dying. And I called in my private health, and I was hours from death.
Wow.
I mean, so I could have, I was lucky, and I could have sued the NHS, but it just didn't enter my mind. I mean, I've got a mate of mine, he goes on holiday every year, And when he comes back, he always sues the holiday company for something. His camera's lost, this is lost. You've got professionals. You know, how many times have you gone on holiday and you come back and go, I'm going to sue them? But you don't. Because there's two types of people. There's those who sue and those who don't. I mean, okay, if you sue the NHS, what are you going to do with the money? You're going to give it to charity? Because how could you spend that money? You know,
I mean, you see, that's where I've landed really on this, is that you hear these people who are suing the NHS, you see them in the papers, whatever, and they always say, I'm not doing it for the money. But they do get the money, right? So, and that is taking the money out of the NHS that we've put in, right? So if they're not doing it for the money, what else would work? And why aren't we asking them? Look, you know, the NHS is broke. You know, if you're not suing for the money because you don't need it for ongoing care or whatever, then what can we do instead of giving you money to make this better? Why aren't we asking that question?
That's a good idea. And the other thing, how about the health tourists who come over here, have a couple of babies? I'm not being racist. You might get a woman come over here from Africa, have a couple of babies. She's going to have a claim up. Not only has she had a nice birth, she's got a nice few quid to go home with. Don't tell me this is not going to happen, because it would. It would definitely happen. You know, what you're saying there is the system is open to be abused. It's open to be abused. It's a tricky one, really. If there's you know, complete negligence and someone has died as a result of it, then.
But how does money fix that?
Maybe you should be able to sue them, but give it to charity. You know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how money fixes that. I mean, money fixes if you go into the NHS to have your left leg removed and you come out and they've taken your right leg and they still then got to take your left leg because that was the one they were meant to be taking in the first place, right? That's negligence. That's when you sue, that they put the you know, the Sharpie marker on the wrong leg.
That's a bit extreme, isn't it, Petrie?
Well, I'm just trying to.
Yeah, and the punchline is, but the good news is the guy in the bed opposite wants to buy your slippers off you.
Yeah, that's the punchline. Listen, I'm feeling particularly miserable at the moment, so I'm going to very dark places. But yeah, that's negligence, and that's the kind of negligence where you would need the compensation money, right? Because you'd need ongoing care.
Yes.
You'd need, you know, all of that. So I understand that when the money is taken out of the NHS, although I do think you should be able to sue the blind surgeon who was doing your operation in the first place, as opposed to the NHS. But if it's not for ongoing care, then there should be something else we can offer people rather than cash.
Oh, yeah, I've got an idea. How about if they did make a mistake, then how about they've got to pay for you to go privately and have it put right? That's a good one, isn't it?
The NHS?
You're not actually getting any money, but you're getting really good, you know.
They're not going to be able to sew your leg back on, though. That's the only problem.
No, I know that's a bit, but no, I know that. But I mean, look, there's hundreds of different sort of things they could, you know, it could be a badly scarred operation.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And then in that case, yes, the NHS, but it will be the NHS that funds that, right? So it'll be the NHS that then has to pay that private, you know, maxillofacial surgeon who's flown in from LA just that morning. You know, it'll be us still paying that bill,
look,
which will come out of the NHS.
I'm just trying to find a bit of wood. Right, I'm touching wood here. If God forbid, if my wife died as a result of a mistake in the NHS,
yeah,
I don't think I could profit from it. I really don't. I mean, I'm pretty solvent anyway, but I don't think I could profit from that. If I did, I'd have to give it to a charity.
Yeah.
Or, you know, but that's just me.
No, but listen, I'm with you on that. But I do think there's got to be another way that the NHS or the lawyers can say, right, you know, we could give you this money, but it's just taking it away from the NHS. What else can we do to make this right? As opposed to...
I know that you do your research. So as we're speaking now, how many claims are going against the NHS as we speak?
I don't have that in front of me, but it will be...
Thousands.
Thousands, yeah.
Probably more than
because
bad.
they've gone up. I mean, the numbers are just extraordinary. How much they've gone up, and I think that is it's either a measure of how bad and awful the NHS is becoming, or it's a measure of people becoming more litigious and knowing, because these ambulance chasing law firms, no fee, no win, or no win, no fee, or whatever it is, that they are advertising, and they go around hospitals. And they say, we're lawyers, here's a card. You know, so more people are suing because it's no win, no fee.
Well, you can sue airlines. I mean, how many times you've gone on holiday and I've waited for a plane for hours before now, but my son got about $6,000 for suing the airline.
Yeah, I mean, look, it happens. It's roughly 37 claims a day, by the way. Wow. That's the number that you were just asking for, how many claims there are against the NHS. It's a lot, right?
It is. So what's your thoughts then? What do you think?
I keep flip-flopping on this one. I think that you should be able to get compensation if you are injured and need long-term care. But I think if it's for any other reason, there should be another way of satisfying somebody's, lust to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's what I think, that we should be offering something other than money to compensate people where something else, like an inquiry or publicity or something like that, could work. That's what I think.
How about if you found out that the surgeon who operated on you wasn't really qualified? How about that then? So, in other words, there's been a crime committed. There's been a crime committed against you, because that's happened. You read it in the papers all the time.
Yeah, well, then I'd probably sue the individual surgeon. Would that?
Yes.
Yeah, or the NHS for employing them. Oh, I don't know, Robert. You've just spun me around again. Listen, great call. I've got to take a quick break. Great to talk to you. I'll be back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here till 1 o'clock. And I just want to read a couple of messages out before I go to Mike, who's in Manchester. Jackie says, fundamentally, all those in authority should be held accountable. If that was accepted, they surely wouldn't make so many bad decisions or mistakes. Taxpayers shouldn't be made to pay for all these terrible mistakes that have been made, i.e. Grenfell Tower, Post Office, COVID, Nottingham, Southport. I mean, you can add all sorts of stuff to that, can't you? The blood mistake, all of that, where people are still waiting for compensation. What's the point of the government having long drawn-out inquiries if nobody is going to be held accountable? It appears that taxpayers always end up paying. If we have an inquiry, the outcome needs to be actioned ASAP. Otherwise, what's the point? And that's what I think as well, Jackie. I'm sick and tired of picking up the bill for other people messing up. It just really frustrates me because if I messed up, I'd have to pick up the bill. But if somebody else messes up, I pick up the bill. That doesn't seem fair. For us little people, we'd end up paying. But somehow they seem to dodge it under the umbrella of public services. And that is not fair. And it's got to stop. Alison said doctors should take out their own insurance and then their mistakes were paid for by the insurance company and not us. Regarding consent forms, I was advised thoroughly to read it before signing. People just sign it and trust if something goes wrong, the hospital can say, well, you signed the consent forms. So please, people, read it properly. And that's from Alison. Just to let you know, the doctors are required to take out adequate insurance or indemnity to practice medicine. The type and level of insurance depends on the doctor's work, employment status and where they work. But it seems that if you're working for the NHS, it'll be the NHS that is sued. If you carry out any private or independent practice, you must arrange adequate and appropriate insurance or indemnity, even if this work takes place on NHS grounds. So I know of a private doctor who was sued for something that was thought to be negligible. It turned out it wasn't, but she had to use her private medical insurance to fight that because she was doing private work. Joanna says suing is the only way to make the NHS accountable for mistakes, in many cases by careless medical staff. Some mistakes alter people's lives permanently. You wouldn't want them to struggle financially for the rest of their lives because of an NHS mistake and being forced to live on inadequate benefits. Yeah, no, I wouldn't, but there's got to be another way as well. Surely we're not beyond that. But I'm telling you, these ambulance chasers literally are in hospitals handing out. I know, because I was handed a card just saying, would you need that? I was like, I was only going in for a blood test. What are you trying to tell me? Anyway, let's talk to Mike, who's in Manchester. Mike, good morning to you. Should we be allowed to sue the NHS?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%. I'm doing it at the moment.
Okay. Tell me as much as you can without... I'm
not going to go into any specifics, but a relative of ours was in a NHS facility. She went to bed at night time, and when she woke up next morning, she had catastrophic multiple fractures and breakages throughout her whole body. She's now bedridden, and no one knows what's happened.
What?
Exactly.
And there's no medical reason or condition that would have caused her to break?
There's no medical... Well, I'll give you her injuries. Broken femur.
That's a big bone.
Yeah, hang on, I'm not finished. Both sides of her pelvis were shattered. Internal bleeding. Both her femurs were driven up inside of a pelvic cavity. Shattered spine. And a broken scapula. And they claim she fell out of bed.
What?
Exactly. She's now bedridden. She can't move.
Oh my God.
The only part of her body she can move is her head and her arm.
Oh my gosh, that's shocking.
There's an ongoing... the reason I can't go into it...
No, it's an ongoing case. No, I appreciate that.
No. There's an ongoing police investigation.
Yeah, there would be, yeah.
No, there wasn't going to be until I reported it to the police.
Well, that is quite clearly a police issue.
Here's the kicker, and this is the bit that's really upsets us, is that this relative, we've now got power of attorney over her. We've now found out that she's left everything in her will, which is a considerable amount of money, to the NHS, the same healthcare trust that has put her in the position she's in now. And now we've got to fight that and contest it to stop them getting the money. I don't want the money from the NHS. I'm not bothered about the money from the NHS. I don't need it. But I want the people that are responsible for this to go to prison. I don't want them struck off. I want them in prison.
And I don't blame you. And that's the thing. But why is it, while you're in the position of suing the NHS, can you only sue them if you ask for money? Do you know what I mean? I know you're saying you don't need the money, but I'm just trying to figure out the right term. Is there a method of suing the NHS without monetary value attached to it? So you could say to them, I don't want your money, but I want to sue you anyway.
We have no clue. I only started this off last week, and then literally the back end of last week I started this off. So I don't know. I've got to go through that with the solicitor. Obviously, the solicitor's going to take it on no win, no fee.
Yeah.
So he's going to make.
Oh yeah. Well, then in that case, that is the other issue, actually, Mike.
Otherwise,
and I'm really glad you said that, because
how do we go about it, though?
Yeah. How do you sue if you don't go for money because you've got to pay the lawyers?
Exactly.
So you have to go for the money. I'm so glad you said that, because that was confusing me. But that makes perfect sense now.
Yeah. See, so now, bear in mind, it's my wife's relative. I've had to take over it because my wife is in bits over it.
Shocking.
She's got enough going on as it is. This lady is quite advanced in years. Before this, she was completely mobile. She could walk around. She could feed herself. Occasionally she used a walking frame, but now
that is shocking.
She can't even have a drink.
So she's going to need money for ongoing care as well.
No, she's going to need 20. She can't be left on her own. She literally cannot be left on her own now.
What if without again divulging too much, have the police taken this case? Are they?
Absolutely
good.
It's not, now, bear in mind, I'm glad that they've told you I'm in Manchester, because it's got nothing to do with Manchester.
Right.
The reason it's from you tell me it says I'm in Manchester. When I first called to talk, I was in Manchester. When I made the call, I don't live in Manchester.
Right.
It's a completely different health authority.
Yeah. But at least the police are involved.
The police are involved. But nothing. This is the thing that's fundamentally wrong with this country. The only time we get updates is when I ring them up and give them a metaphorical kick up the ass to do it.
It's a lot, isn't it?
Nothing.
And in the meantime, the process of suing the NHS, which I completely understand, is that advancing at least with the lawyer, or do they need to wait for the criminal case to be done?
No, that can run separate to a criminal case.
Okay.
The NHS can't do anything at the moment because I've reported it to the police. They can't complete their internal investigation until the police have completed theirs. But I know I can't, without going into anything, I know something's gone because one of the nurses involved came out to the car and told my wife, told my wife to let me off the leash.
Really?
Because I'm not a monkey you want on your back.
So the nurse knows something went on.
Oh, absolutely. She's too scared to say anything. I honestly agree. I believe that. I mean, I'm not a violent person, but I'm very tenacious, and I won't.
Yeah, you're not going to let it go. No.
Absolutely, 100%. This is involving. I mean, our children have lost a relative because they can't go and see her because she's got children, and if they go and see her and they've got a cold, she'll get a chest infection because she's not moving. She can't breathe deep enough into her lungs, and a chest infection will kill her. We were told when this happened that she wouldn't last 24 hours.
God, that is so shocking.
And we were only told 18 hours after it happened. And it's just, as far as I'm concerned, the particular bit of the NHS that is involved, I would now get in a taxi and go to a separate part of the country to be treated.
Would you?
Absolutely. In fact, no, I wouldn't. I'd drive myself to a separate part of the country to be treated. Because I don't trust them.
I mean, that is one of the most shocking stories I've ever heard.
Trust me, you're going to hear about it on the news in the coming months, I promise you.
Well, you know,
I promise you.
When it's out in public, give us another call, will you?
Well, Kev, one of your colleagues, I rang him about it last year when it happened, without going into any details. When he has one of the doctors on, doesn't he?
Yeah.
And it had only just happened, and I'd had a drink that night, so I might have said something. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, good luck with it all. I mean, it's just perfectly understandable what you're doing, and you really have made a penny drop in my head about having to go for money in order to pay for the lawyers on this no win, no fee.
Say, we same as your previous caller, we're financially secure. I'm nearly 60. We're financially secure. I don't want or need the money from the NHS. I'm not bothered about money. Money sickens me. I'll tell you straight, money sickens me. It really does sicken me. But
it's the only way to sue, yeah.
Well, no, it's not only that. It's the simple fact that we've now found out because we've got hold of a will where she's left the money to, and it's one of them. You what?
That is.
And
really...
I've now got to go to. Well, not me, my wife, because we're giving the money to our daughter. That's what the money was going. The money from a will. That was always where it was going to go to make her life easier. So now we've got to
undo that.
The will when she does pass away, which she's now started to lose the will to live, because all she's doing is sitting in a room looking at a magnolia wall, because she can't do anything.
That is shocking, absolutely shocking. Listen, I wish you well.
It's the society we live in. Unfortunately, someone knows what's gone on, and nobody won't say nothing.
No, it's awful. I mean, somebody could do that to an old lady, or could you
know something? I don't actually think someone's hurt her by design. I really don't. But what really frightens me is that someone knows what's gone on, and they're covering it up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think she's been assaulted. At first I thought she'd been sexually assaulted by her injuries with the pelvis.
God.
Yeah, I know. But since I've sort of thought about it, no, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think that they may have been moving her in a hoist, and they've dropped her, and then covered it up.
Oh God! I hope you find out, because that would just you need to find out, right?
To be honest, I honestly don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of it. I really don't. But I want some kind of closure for my wife. She's in the other room now. We sleep in separate rooms. It's married life. It works better this way, trust me, because I snore like a drain. But I want some closure for my wife, because it's my wife's last living relative.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, you have to know, you have to find out one way or the other. Mike, what a story, quite extraordinary. Thank you for sharing that. And you have made a penny drop, actually, with having to sue for money in order to pay the lawyers. I guess that's something you've got to do. Mike, thank you very much indeed. I've got to take a break, but I will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good morning to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, and that gives us about 8 minutes. The NHS are already refusing risky operations, says Stuart. My friend's mother broke her hip and she was 86. She was in an absolute agony, but they refused to operate for fear of her dying. She offered to sign that if she died, they were not to blame, but still they refused. She lived for another 4 years in total agony every day. This is our so-called humane NHS. It's awful. I'm pretty sure I need a hip operation, actually. Worrying me. Anyway, suing the NHS is counterproductive, says Mark. People pretend it's about justice, but they do want the money. But the NHS also needs to sack incompetent staff. I'm speaking as a son whose dad was misdiagnosed and given a hernia operation when he had cancer that was terminal at the time it was found. And that's from Mark. Yeah, I mean, that's when you want to sue, but you want to sue them to do something different, right? You don't need the money because that's not going to compensate you for the loss of your dad, but you want them to sack people, or you want them to do something and you want to see it followed through. That's one of the ways of doing it. And Stephen Winchester says the NHS has its own insurance scheme called NHS Resolution, so claims are not coming out of the budget for patients. They pay premiums like any insurance. Can you imagine what those premiums are? Just imagine what the premiums are for NHS negligence payments. And every time, so there's 37 claims a day, every time there's another claim goes in, the insurance goes up. And we are still paying that bill, which I suspect is a lot of money. So, yeah. Anyway, let's talk to Andrew now, he doesn't say where, he's in Bristol. Good morning, Andrew.
Yeah, very good morning to you, Petrie. Great show as usual.
Thank you very much. Should we be able to sue the NHS?
Well, maybe so, but I'd like to look at it from another angle, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
Some of the stories I'm hearing on your show tonight have been absolutely horrific. And, my heart goes out to all those people that are having these problems and have experienced something really bad. But I'd like to put a word in for the NHS. I'm 71 years old, and so I've had a fairly long experience of what they do. Back in 1954, when I was born with a spina bifida condition. I was operated on when I was 48 hours old. My parents were told that I might not walk again, but I did. So thank you very much to the neurologist at French Hospital in Bristol at that time for doing that for me.
Yeah.
The other thing, two other things really. Back in 2021, I was diagnosed with 3/4 prostate cancer.
Okay.
And the treatment I've got and the speed at which it was all done absolutely smacked me. It was amazingly done. I'm going through a period of remission at the moment. It seems to be under control, so thank you very much again to the NHS for that. And the third thing, I was back in July, around the time of the general election, I had a bad fall.
Right.
I was on the ground here at the flat for several days, and
oh no!
I couldn't get up, basically.
And you live alone, and there was no way of alerting anybody.
Exactly.
Oh, gosh.
And eventually, I did manage to grab a mobile phone, and I phoned up Bristol Council to pay my council tax, and I explained it. My position to the lady on the other end, because I was a couple of days late paying it, and she said, "You need some help."
So hang on a minute. So you're lying on the floor, day and night for a couple of days, and you're thinking, "I haven't paid my council tax."
Yeah.
And you phone the council, not an ambulance, to pay your council tax. And
she said, "You need help." Eventually, I did come to my senses, and basically for that period that I was on the floor, I had the hallucinations and everything.
Oh my gosh!
I was seeing things that weren't there, things crawling up walls, all sorts of things.
I bet you were.
Even little puppies on my bed. It was crazy. Anyway, to cut a long story short, eventually I did phone for help, and some paramedics came in. They took me into the Bristol Royal Infirmary. My kidney function was way down. It was practically bad. Well, really, really bad.
Well, presumably you weren't eating or drinking while you were lying on the floor.
Well, no, I managed to get a drink. I managed to order some energy drinks from online, and they delivered it. Getting to the door was a bit difficult, and I was because I was going everywhere on my backside, and I ended up with a very damaged backside, a wound on my backside, which by the time I got to the Royal Infirmary was black.
Oh gosh!
I'm sorry to say, it sounds awful, and it was. And they pumped me full of antibiotics to try and get rid of any infection that might be there. And I was filled with fluids, and eventually my kidney function came up. And all in all, I was in the hospital there for a month. And I was served by doctors and nurses from all over the world, basically. I had Indians, Africans, you name them, I had them. And the care I had in that period was absolutely amazing. And so I can understand these people who want to sue the NHS for things that go wrong, but it's only fair to say when things go right.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And look, on the whole, I still believe in the NHS. I still believe, some people say, look, it's a busted flush, it's a white elephant, it's never going to work again. But I have a lot of faith in the NHS. And look, we